Once a year, what I want to start doing is kind of like a recap art video in terms of the stuff that I've done. And usually it'll be around the end of Inktober that I will do this. Because then, if nothing else, if I haven't gotten to do any like art unless set for Inktober, then at least we can just go back over what we did for Inktober that year. This video will be the longest one though going forwards. I might do two a year, we'll see. But because this one's going to kind of cover everything since the beginning of 2024, because there's some importance there, and I want to go over all of that. So this one will be a little lengthy. So we'll be going over Inktober technically at two different parts for last year and this year, other art projects that I've done as well, etc., etc. I'm doing a video too because even though I post these in like say Steam's Discord server, not everyone's on Steam's Discord server that might be interested in this. And also a YouTube video is free, so it's be a very easily accessible thing for everybody. So I figure if I do this way, cool, there you go. So just, buckle up, grab some popcorn, hold your horses, keep your pants on, bully the girl next door, all of the things, and here we're going to go into this. But this one, while it will be lengthy, and I kind of apologize, this is why. So if you've been interested in not just, I guess, my art, but also like my thought processes going into why I did certain things certain ways, that's what this video is going to kind of basically be. So it's a bit of a lengthy watch probably by the time this gets all wrapped up, but that's kind of why it's going to be like that. And then even if you are someone that is on the Discord, like say Steam, for example, it's his server, if he just has been kind of maybe curious why I went a certain direction on something, this is going to be what this video is going to kind of encompass. So it's fitting, if anything, to have Zabel and Etsuko's streams open, one for one reason and the other for the last project that we'll be talking about in this video. So one of the first ways I'm starting this video off is to go back to January of 2024. Steam decided at the beginning of 2024, he was going to stream like every Monday through Friday, at least every single week, as long as possible. And he was doing a lot of art streams because he's an artist. That's what his main thing is. Usually when he's streaming, most likely you can bet on it being art. But I happen to have a notebook, some pencils that still were pretty sharpened, even though all the erasers were gone. And I'm like, well, why not, when he streams, make that like my art block hour, if you will. So if he streams like 2 hours in the afternoon, I'll just try and draw for 2 hours in the afternoon because I do like drawing. Brief history, because I kind of touched on this in the art journey video back in July. That was more about the mechanics, captains, and vices project, but I did mention in there I've liked drawing like forever. I think I hit a plateau when I was a kid going into middle school, which leads us to cursive. I'll make that brief too. But cursive was fun because the way the letters flowed, it reminded me of drawing again. So that's what kind of made me pick back up drawing, even though they replaced cursive with computer literacy is what they called it, which, I guess makes sense in a digital age. Teaching kids while we were young to be able to use these computers that are now everywhere. It made sense, but I miss cursive is a long story short of that. And the way it worked and just kind of, like I said, flowed was like, I want to draw again. So even though cursive went away, cursive's going away brought back me drawing more to kind of keep that feeling. So that was like the positive I took away from cursive's absence for that. And I'd say then I hit like another block or another like plateau, if you will, of not really ever being able to figure out how to shade very well. I still don't think I'm very good at shading, as a matter of fact. No matter how much I practice, I never settled on anything that I liked, basically. There's a lot of drawings I would do where I'm like, I'm kind of okay with how this is drawn. I don't like how this looks now that I've colored it. So there's a lot of drawings I've done that I've kind of left uncolored for that reason. But this takes us now to 2024, where once again, I like drawing, and now that I do YouTube, any assets that I've made, especially when I used to do like the quote unquote animation, which was stop motion sketch, I did that. It was me because I didn't have the money to pay artists what I think they deserve to be paid. So it's like, okay, then I guess we had to do it ourselves. So all of that for the years and back in the old times too, it was we drew that, and the way I did that was I drew the body and I made the arms and head separate, so I could move the arms and head, because I didn't have any video editor not named Windows Movie Maker, so we had to do stop motion sketch. So it means if the arm is here, that was one, but then since the arm was a separate piece, I could move it up here for second picture, third picture, fourth picture, etc. And that was the idea back then. So a lot of art stuff kind of kept on, because if I wanted to do anything, with my YouTube channel, when I used to use my cartoon character a lot more, I needed to be able to draw it. Which leads us then to now that the anime flashback is over, 2024. So I would open my notebook, I'd sketch as best I could, run out of space sometimes, trying to figure out things like proportions and stuff like that. Things that I haven't really practiced all that much, especially like I mentioned in the beginning here. My pencils all had their erasers gone. So once I drew it, that it is what it is. This is Steam. If you might not be able to tell, because the once this is edited, the quality might not be as visible. But it was me trying to attempt to draw Shell at the time, and I never finished his arms for some reason. I don't know why, but I ran out of space on the paper, and it was like, well, I can't erase it, so this just is what it is, and that's kind of how that works. We'll get into a conversation about that concept later on, because that concept came up on like day one of Inktober. Etsuko happened to swing by the stream, and she said something specifically. The terminology, I mean specifically, I don't remember it, but I remember the concept, and it was an interesting one, because I think there's some fun stuff there now that I got a tablet, but we're not quite there yet. Okay, so this was like another incomplete that I did during that stream too. So I started drawing Sarah's character. Now, if you're in mechanics, or even if you're not, if you're an artist at all, one of the universal agreements that's agreed upon in mechanics is that Sarah's character is the most, I don't want to say difficult character to draw. There's a lot of fun, interesting stuff going on with her character, but it is one of the most complex characters, at least within mechanics, to draw with any regularity, especially if you're a bit of perfectionist, and so you want to make sure you don't skip and simplify details. So that's what this is. That's also part of why it too is incomplete. And then the top is something I still haven't finished yet. There's an idea in mechanics. We watched the Ninja Turtle movies, the old ones, right, with the suits and the stuff. We just kind of like an impromptu movie night while we were working on stuff. And so in that particular instance, I don't remember why, but I remember, so Q was designated as Leonardo, Steam was designated as Raphael, Otoman was designated as Michelangelo, which left, of course, me as Donatello. I'm still going to do that at some point, too. That would be a fun project. So spoiler alert, that will be coming at some point in the future, I imagine. But that's what the top part is, and the bottom part was Sarah's character. And again, it would be like, okay, let's see how far we can get. And then maybe we'll use the end of Steam stream as like the, okay, well, this is as far as we get. Boom. Maybe reflect a little bit about what we tried to do, what we learned, and then go from there. See, one of the things I used to do, one of the things me and my brother used to do growing up, too, is we would used to make comics. We'd make comics off of like Sonic, Mega Man, and Naruto. So back then, I used to draw Kakashi, for example, quite often. And it's funny because we'd also would have, or at least for me, I'd have this simplified version of these characters that I'd draw, so I could draw a whole comic issue, and then we'd read them to each other. It was pretty fun because we had our own plot lines that were going, and so suddenly I'm like, well, now I'm invested in what he's doing with his plot line, and now he's interested in what I'm doing with my plot line, because we're like making stuff up as kids. And then we're drawing to the best of our abilities. I wish I still had like that notebook. It was fun. It was fun to do pencil and paper and stuff like that, and just kind of just draw these characters that exist, so we have a reference in a way. And so I was like, can I still do Kakashi after all these years? The answer is no. I definitely messed up on the hair, but the general idea started coming back a bit, and I was like, okay, cool. Okay, so this has to do with the G Republic. See, the G Republic, long story short, comes from a story I wrote. Some of you've heard this time and time before. There's a story I had to write in 7th grade, which for anyone who doesn't use the grade like that, around ages 12, 13. And the idea was make a story about whatever. So I made a story about everything I was into at the time, everything I kind of liked. I just fused them into one big story. I call it fusion. Very original, 12-year-old me. I'm not roasting them though. It's like, I'm not good at names now. I'm not going to roast them for names back then. But the G Republic was my own organization within the greater like good guy force, which didn't have a name at the time. But back then, it was basically, you could just call it like synonymous with the Grand Army of the Republic, even though that's not what the G stood for. It was because of narcissism. It stood for me, But I, in the last year and a half, have started sitting down and drawing more original designs for if the G Republic really was a thing. And so this was just a quick drawing of probably what the naval ship would kind of look like, which it keeps the twin bridges from the Venator, because I just think that's a cool look. I like that idea. And especially because if you're going to have bridges on towers or just open period and one gets sniped or something, it's kind of cool to have a second one as a backup. So there's that. But I'll probably get more into this when I actually maybe draw it proper. But the general idea is that that's where the similarities kind of end. The engine formation on the back looks different. For the most part, it's still kind of like a hybrid of like most ships, and especially in sci-fi nowadays, where they're kind of all encompassing. They're a battleship and a destroyer and a carrier kind of a thing. So I'm not really too original on that, but there's some original designs I got ideas for. The troops look way more original than the ships do, to be honest, because I also have this horrible problem where, as I'm trying to design original things, when it comes to this, though, I'm like, I just also really like the Republic's designs, though. It's why I kept the Twin Bridge Tower, for example. The Arc 170 looks amazing. The TX 130 is amazing. The freaking ATXT, that some of y'all ain't gonna have a clue what that is, from an old 2001 Star Wars Clone Wars game where you just kind of play as just the vehicles. They just had cool looks, and I'm gonna have a hard time differentiating, because in the story, like I said, it was technically the same thing, but there was a deviation. I could go into the story for a different video. This is the art video, so I'll just keep it to the art. But that's what this was, and that's gonna be exciting because going forward, you're gonna see me trying to tackle that as an excuse to do more art, and then also try and design a bit more original things. All right, this is a quick one. This one goes into February, where the battle disc thing happened, of course, right? The quote-unquote bullying, which is relevant. It would be relevant a lot more later, but I remember trying to draw a quick, it was like a draw in 60 seconds reenactment of what happened that day. This is the problem with this one. This one was funny to me because the idea is she's using one of her ears to take me out with a disc. Just that's basically what happened when you really think about it. That's what I'm gonna tell my kids. No one's gonna be able to stop me. No one. They're gonna learn lies, I guess, if you want to put it that way, and that's nice. But for me, it's the truth. I witnessed it. I was there, so crazy. But that's a fun idea that can spawn sometimes. When I was, again, a lot of this is before tablets, so sometimes I just have my notebook out. I'm like, cool, what are we gonna draw? And it's like, here's an idea. Maybe you could try drawing in, say, 60 seconds. Either draw as much of it as you can in 60 seconds, or draw it, but maybe like super simplified in 60 seconds. And so that's what led to ideas like this sometimes, where it's like, okay, let me try and draw a reenactment of February 10th as in under a minute, and let's see how far we can get. And so this is how far we got. Technically, that was the first time I tried drawing Etsuko. I didn't really, we'll get into Etsuko more actually later on, but there's a couple people I can line up that we'll get into this more later on too, but I'll touch on it now. Just that I also have this horrible habit of not using references. If I can't remember it or I can't envision it in my mind, we're just doing it to the best of my ability. And that's fine. I'm not saying references are cheating or anything like that, by the way, but I do have this habit of trying to think of, like, because I've watched people like Steam and stuff for years. I've known Steam almost 8 years now, right? Because I've watched so many different people and artists and how quickly they can do stuff, right? Like, I might not be known as an artist, but I have been drawing and have enjoyed drawing since I was like 5. So some of these cats have been doing it as long or longer, and they too can just, it feels like they can just sketch stuff. They'll just open a canvas and make stuff. And I'm like, well, obviously that should be the progression then if I want to get better, is I need to be able to do that, right? Not necessarily. So we get into talking about like her and some others, because it's like, okay, well, what do I remember from memory? Not a lot, because I was concussed for a lot of that match, actually, as a matter of fact. There was a lot of you just getting knocked out. But I remember, it was one of the ways that I would kind of conceptualize it, is kind of remember like things, characteristics about the thing that you're trying to draw. Even if you can't fully remember it, what can you kind of remember that are like maybe like highlight points? So like, for example, them, ears, scarf thing, I don't remember the proper name of, the outfit, not really. Didn't really remember that. Hair, though. So, like, I'm using them as an example here, but in general, right? So if you were drawing someone else, or you were drawing a ship or a location or something that you can't fully remember, can you maybe even recall bullet points, characteristics about the thing, and then maybe try and go from there? Because honestly, you're not probably ever going to draw a one-to-one of something. Every one of us could try and draw Mickey Mouse, and because of our own styles, it's not going to look the same, you know what I mean? And none of them are wrong for that necessarily. Now, if you're someone that's trying to draw something as close to how it actually is as possible, that's a different, conversation, but also a different, thing too. But most likely, if we were all, commissioned to draw Shadow the Hedgehog, he's going to look different in all of our different styles. So this was one of, I think, the last drawings I did on pencil paper. And it's one of the things I realized too, where especially with the inability to erase things, it can kind of make things a little hard to, like, if you mess up things like proportions and stuff. So Takal, Takomaru, as an artist, they're like an Android VTuber. They do fun and funny stuff. They got their name from Sonic Adventure, because Tikal, for those of you that play Sonic Adventure from like Chaos and stuff like that, the first one specifically, right? They spelt it the way they spelt it though, their name, because they thought that's how it was actually spelt. But that's the reference. And so when I heard that in that conversation, I'm like, okay, bet I'm gonna draw your VTuber character combined with Tikal's design. And so that's what this was. And so it's not perfect. But the legs, for example, is what I mentioned. I ran out of paper. That's the bottom of the paper there. So I wanted all of it to be in the picture. I didn't want to cut stuff off and kind of like cheat that way. So I was like, okay, bet. Oops. But it was still fun to do. And I would definitely do something like that again, especially now where I have canvases and like I said, tablet and stuff. We're getting towards the tablet actually. So we're already in like April of 2024. I think this was one of actually, I take it back. So now we jump to, I think, June. Yeah, this is actually right before I get the tablet. So this is June 2024. So for those of y'all like in mechanics and stuff that might remember, this is when we first kind of really got the modded Minecraft server. So I was building the Space Colony Arc, stuff like that too. This image comes because I finally saw the video. I think Steam sent it to me. I don't remember. When PewDiePie did his like 100-day art challenge, right? And so as I'm watching that video, again, I have my notebook next to me. So I open it up and I start sketching. And so by the end time I finished that video, I sketched this. And I was like, okay, cool. This was kind of fun to do, and then in the corner, practice things like mouths and stuff like that. So there's that. And this was actually technically the last thing I drew before then Tanks would get the Wacom 1 or the 1 by Wacom tablet off of Throne. Thanks to Steam even hipping me to what tablets, because like now it's a little scratched at this point, unfortunately, because I didn't realize this had the ability to scratch it until it was a bit late, and then I realized that's what was happening, and so I had to adjust accordingly. And I haven't scratched, I only scratched like this little part over here. All the rest of it still works fine, and it's great, especially because like there were also other projects I could go into, and we will before we properly get into like the tablet arc of the journey, where I would like open Photoshop and I was using mouse to draw stuff, like the mouse, as if you will. So drawing and using this screen here instead of using a screen on the tablet, because I know there's some tablets with screens. I'm not knocking them, but I'm saying like this one isn't one of them, and it's fine because I can figure out still how to do the stuff I've been doing, because it's actually pretty similar. It's like using the mouse, but now I got a little stylus, and it's pretty cool. So before we get into the tablet arc specifically, I'll just talk about mouse and stuff again real quick. So what I would do sometimes, so there's the NFL, right? The NFL that exists in the States. They're trying to branch out. They do like a couple games now in Germany, Spain, London, South America even. They're growing. But the point is, whether you're into it or not, this is all you need to know is I have a team that I root for, that I've been rooting for like 20 years. Capstan has a team that she's now rooting for and has been rooting for several years. That happens to have been the team that stole my team's Super Bowl in 2005. Anyways, because of that, what I would do is I would draw these little quote-unquote animations, and I do them weekly. And this was done with mouse, like in Photoshop. So kind of when I got time to get the tablet, even though it's on a screen tablet, it still worked out because I was doing stuff like this. And so it was fine. So like there was this one that had to do with Pumpkin Hill. And these aren't like the best drawn things. No.
We're not jumping into the void down there.
Oh, I forgot. Yeah. I did the voice acting and stuff too. I'd put the text stuff. It was fun. But like some of the ideas with doing these ideas specifically.
Well, when in Rome.
Both our teams were 4-2 at that point. They weren't long videos. They were like a 30-second situation. But the idea was also to try and draw something that was consistent. So instead of trying to draw the most perfect version, for example, of myself for Capstan, it was like, what can I draw that I can easily replicate on like a weekly basis? And that was my mindset going into making these is, okay, well, if I was doing these weekly, what's a style that I could do weekly, kind of similar to the comic things I talked about earlier? And so one of the things I've been doing for the past 2 years too is sometimes a conversation will happen in like chat. So it might be like Steam's chat, it might be anyone's chat, and I'll screenshot it. And I'll screenshot it because it'll give me an idea to draw later. Maybe I can't draw it at that point in time, and maybe sometimes maybe no time soon, but I can take it, put it in a folder, and then have, go look through that and be like, oh yeah, right, they said yada 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 yada, and it made me think about maybe I could draw that at some point. So admittedly, I have folders on my PC that has like some of everyone's names like individualized, where sometimes I'll screenshot a conversation in their chat, and then I'll be like, what is this folder? Why do I have a folder of their name? Click, oh, because they talked about this interesting idea that I think I could try drawing one day. Or this would be like a funny idea to draw, something like that, right? So that is something I have in a section on my PC at this point, is a lot of screenshots from different people's streams, and the ideas eventually I'm going to draw those, and that's going to be a fun set of future projects, and I think that can be fun. And I'd like to think my memory was just sharp enough to just remember, but sometimes a lot of stuff happens that is funny in one go, and this was one of them. This idea technically spawned from Steam doing a horror stream. I think it was it moves or something like that. But Steam was mentioning that it was gonna be Capston's turn because Capston had gifted him a horror game to try, and so I'm like, I can do something about that, and so that's what led to this one, I believe. Same thing. It's like, can I just draw all this stuff quickly? Ooh, ow! Sorry about that.
Could that be at this hour?
I also recorded it at 4 a.m. so I could sound as tired as possible. Good old Steam. Yeah, I forget what was said, but Capston said that.
Don't worry, I got you. Your turn's coming pretty soon.
Yeah, it's just an excuse sometimes to draw and do stuff. Okay, there was this one. This one I worked on. So Mechanics every now and then has work blitz week, which is kind of like just a blitz of doing work. And it'll be a certain time frame. It's kind of like an idea of a study hall too, where if some people just work better in a group, and not necessarily like with others on said project, but just if you work better, say in a call with other people who are also working on stuff like a study hall, that's kind of like the idea, the vibe it encompasses. And some people, they do work maybe better that way. If they really need to get something done and they've kind of tripped up on themselves, or they're kind of hit a bit of a plateau or something, maybe that can help break people through, is being around the energy of other people who are also then hard at work. So we call them work blitzes. This was something I made back then too, which was actually just explaining the NFL and how it works as well, because I think it was the year our two teams weren't playing each other. I think that's why I made this. The only thing I regret that I can say this now too is Capston has a shirt, but the problem is I think I was making this on my old monitor, and my old monitor was like a small TV actually instead of a proper monitor. So the color I was using for the shirt looked the same as the color I was using for her skin. So I do need to say that before we do this, because that was something she noticed immediately, and I'm like, you know what, you're right. I did have like the shirt layer, and I could have made it like I can see it more now on this new monitor, but I couldn't see it back then very well because you'll see. But it's just stuff like this. Finding excuses to draw was the main fun part of all these things. But this one, so I think this one was explaining the NFL, and then there's like one more with a water hose that we'll watch, and then we'll finally get into the tablet arc, if you will.
32 teams in the NFL, split in half into two groups.
Stop motion
16
sketch.
and 16.
So
16
these are
on the
all
east side,
individual
16 on the red side.
slides. So they have a shirt, but you can tell.
Four groups, like a compass of north, east, south, and west.
Yep.
So blue north, blue east, blue south, and blue west, and red north, red east, red south.
These are fun to
and
do.
red
I should
west.
do these more often. Also, excuses
basically,
to
there are
blinking in
32
hair.
teams. So, the tradition is saved. Should our two teams clash in the Super Bowl, so be it. But for the sake of keeping tradition this year, pretty cool, huh? What do you think? And she's bored of me. Man.
Stupid. Or this one, I forget why, but she said, you better not come home traipsing mud everywhere. And I'm like, bet. Because the long story short is, for some reason, they're a hostage in my basement, but at the same time, like not, but at the same time are. And first of all, no, they're not, because the front door is always just open. So like, the freedom is based off of if you just feel like getting up and leaving. But that's what this one was, and I was like, bet. And again, that's just kind of how it works sometimes. Is like you just get a reason to draw, and then you draw. You getting the gardening hose? That's what it was.
If she thinks she can tell me what to do in my own
I forget
house,
what.
she's got
It must have been
another
Baldur's
thing coming
Gate 3 related. Surprise.
Alright, listen. I can explain. First of all, why did you stay
These were
up
fun to do.
and
Making the
stay?
UI for the text
Who
boxes, all
the
that stuff.
entire French-loving heck are you pointing at? We can talk about this. Listen, you look amazing today.
It's just fun, goofy stuff, right? So that was the idea for a lot of those back then. I'm probably going to keep doing more of those, as a matter of fact. Sometimes it's just kind of finding any and every excuse to just get out your stuff and draw, even if it's goofy, even if it's not perfect, even if it's just for a little bit. It's like one of the first things I did, since Tanks was the one that bought it and Steam was the one that even helped me figure out how to even what a tablet was, as I drew the three of us just to test out how drawing on it would feel. And so it was like the first day I got it, the first thing I did was open it up and draw this, which is our three characters. And it's okay. It was really just kind of feeling out how it just felt to draw with it, since I hadn't done it before. It felt pretty familiar. Like I said, pen, paper, and all that stuff, pencil, paper, all that good stuff. So this was technically the first of what is now then July 2024. Yeah. So even though I would say I primarily use Photoshop, I also use Paint as well. So this was a one I did in Paint of again, Kimple in like 60 seconds, right? So I was like, cool, let me use the pencil, let me see what I can sketch, and then call it good. This will be a bit more relevant later, but Steam has a version of his character that's called like Unga Bunga Steam. You know, like head empty, no thought. So I was like, cool, let me draw Seal's character, Unga Bunga, as well, as a matter of fact, and practice like hatching and stuff like that. If you know what the term hatching is when it comes to drawing. So there's like a couple different sketches I started out with back then, especially when I first got the tablet, and it was fun to just kind of feel it out and feel, first of all, the fact that I could erase if I messed something up if I really wanted to, but also just how it felt to just kind of draw a lot again. Because as much as I like the notebook and drawing on paper, there's a finite amount of paper. And you can say there's a finite amount of memory and storage for things like Photoshop or Paint or whatever too, but for now there isn't. It's a pretty high bar. There was a meme, the Omni-Man meme, where cheeks basically, but back when we were still doing a lot of TTT on this channel, so this must have been before August 2024 still, there was a video where Digi made, I don't remember why, but Zabel and Lucy must have been on the same team, and Digi made the joke about who wears the pants of the two of them. Then I forget why, they must have both been bad guys or something like that. So what I did is I drew this drawing with Lucy and Zabel's character mimicking that Omni-Man thing because it'd be stupid and silly and dumb and goofy. And that's exactly why this exists, and that's exactly what I mean by sometimes you just do a goofy thing, and I put that in the video. I remember that. There was this one, and there was also the Cover Me Porkins. Hold on. Yeah, there was also this one where, so in TTT, I've been playing as the Helltaker, if you heard of that game by Van Ripper. It came out in like 2020. And then Lucy plays as Lucy. And so there's this one part where we load into the first round. Digi's dead. I'm a detective, so I have a defib and I can revive him, if only. But in the game, I could do that. So I'm like, cover me, Porkins, to Lucy. And she got it. It's a reference to the first Star Wars, A New Hope. But to the people who didn't maybe necessarily know that reference, they thought it was the funniest thing. They're like, you just called her Porkins, and they were dying of laughter while I'm trying to bring this man back to life, and then I get killed. And it's funny because by the time we got to the later episodes of TTT, it was just goofiness and jokes as it was, but it was stuff like that. So I'm like, I can draw that. And that's the thing I've begun doing too, is drawing stuff and then putting them into videos when I make jokes like that. So sometimes some videos will take a little longer to come out than they would have otherwise, because I'm like, I gotta draw that. And that's going to be relevant when we get to mechanics and the captains and the vices as well. But that won't be until 2025. We're still in 2024. But yeah, there's definitely been times now where I'm like, oh, I can do something with this, or I can do something with that. Or I can draw. The process, has been made way more efficient than it used to be. Where when I would draw it on pencil and paper, if I wanted to make it quote unquote digital, I'd have to take it, put it into Paint, like line it in paint so I could then have solid lines on it, so that if I take like the fill bucket with white and try to fill it in, it won't bleed over the pencil markings like it would otherwise. And then I finally have a clean version that I can then finally color and do stuff with. And I was like, nah. Now with a tablet, we can kind of just skip all those first steps. You know, I'll be using the infamous firebomb, as y'all call it, because it's actually gotten worse. It's actually starting to crack the phone case completely because it's a spicy pillow. But you know, it's been a spicy pillow for 10 months. It can hold on a little bit longer. Now, before we get to Inktober 2024, we had this that I drew. I started playing Shadow the Hedgehog 2005 again by late August into September of 2024. And then going into October of 2024, as a matter of fact. In that game, there is a somewhat hovercraft battle tank, is what it's kind of classified as, vehicle. One is Heavy Dog from 50 years ago, which could not fly, but it could hover. And then you had Blue Falcon, which definitely could fly. Blue Falcon is also a very funny name to give to a military vehicle. But anyways, this spawned off of a separate conversation that has to do with Steam as well, where I kind of just made like an Etsuko version of it. And I had this conversation with her in her chat, where I kind of was like asking her, does she think she could fly a hover battle tank, essentially, which is essentially a VTOL vehicle. It sounds futuristic when you call it like a hover battle tank, and obviously gun isn't the most advanced organization in fiction, but ideally, if you can pilot a VTOL vehicle, you most likely could pilot one of these, basically. So I made one because based off of her answer in that conversation. With the differences being that all but the front launcher instead launches out a lot of battle disc, because, you know, battle disc, and how she spawned 1,000 once. I tried to quit without saving, and I couldn't leave the arena. I was stuck in there. So those were the ones on the sides, but the front one's still just, you know, your standard missile launcher for anti-air reasons in case you get attacked. But that was just a fun idea to draw, because I was really into playing that game again. And I was like, why not? I forget why I had that conversation with her specifically, if I'm being completely honest. I think it's because I had the battle disc idea, like having the other launchers fire and even the what's called the particle cannon, when it fires out, it's kind of like a disc that fires out. So if you made it red, it kind of looks like it could all work. I think that might have been why that conversation happened, when I think about it. But it was also just a good excuse to try drawing something that wasn't a person and more of a vehicle. It's not the greatest. But this is like the first 2 months into having the tablet and kind of still getting used to it, not even realizing how the tablet, like the pressure and all that stuff, I was still figuring all that stuff out. And so I'm still proud of it, I guess, is the point. And that's part of this video too, is to categorize these things, not because they're perfect, not because they'll get front page, art contest, anything like that. It's not about that. It's more about the journey so far, and I kind of want to document it. Because I might not save everything that I do going forwards, but as I'm still in that learning process, it's kind of nice to be able to kind of have designated times to then kind of take, okay, this was the frame for here. This is a frame, say 6 months later. What's some of the similarities? What's some of the differences? What's things that we've improved on? What's things that we actually maybe didn't necessarily need to improve on and have actually kept consistent, is why I'm making a video like this too. So I could probably try redrawing this at some point. That could be fun, but I don't necessarily need to. So like there's Blue Falcon, there's Heavy Dog. So theirs was just called Red Rabbit, because why not Red Rabbit? It kind of, the alliteration just feeds itself. I changed the text color to pink though, because I used black originally, and graphic was like, that's kind of hard to read. I'm like, you right, homie. So because I went over Inktober 2024 in that art journey video back in July, I'll keep this one quicker so we can get to the newer stuff, because this video is already going to be like at least an hour and a half at this rate. Also, what I didn't realize in the art journey video is by having me on camera, it kind of covers up some of the text. So I'll make sure to have the image on top of the screen so you can see the full image if you want. But I believe day one was backpack. So there's me, I'm 15 minutes away. That's a melanin joke. Steam will understand that one. Creature will understand that one. Bits, Mitchie, y'all understand that one. We're 15 minutes away. No, we're not. No, we're not. But I'll just really quick, the backpack, me, also BT, which was short for battle truck. In the story I was writing, we had vehicles. Our main group had what I call the battle vehicles. It was just, the battle truck, battle copter, battle van, battle plane, battle. It was just battle insert vehicle. That was it. So some of us had like a one that we definitely used the most, so it was kind of designated as ours. So mine was the battle truck. It was kind of like a fusion of like a 2011 Ford Escape and a Hummer, H2 to be specific, but it was definitely tanky for sure. Because that was also another thing. I'll get into it in a different video one day about stuff like that from the story as I get to drawing them. But for plot reasons, all the vehicles were also incredibly durable, for really no reason other than I just felt like it and not having to explain certain things. But yeah, backpack. Day 2, I believe, was discovery. So as I'm driving this truck and we're on our way, still 15 minutes away, of course, found a chow egg. It hatches. We take the chow with us. Day 3 was boots, I believe. Yeah, so I combined Shadow and Knuckles' shoe into the Shadkles prototype 50 boots. 14 minutes away. We're making progress. I believe day 4. Okay, actually, I have this marked up here. So day 4 was exotic. So as I'm over here at the Snoodles, getting Snoodles, exotic snake noodles. There's actually a Phoenix Firebird I missed flying above us. So and then day 5, binoculars. The chow is telling me that I missed a Phoenix. And then I go into the gestation period. Did you know the gestation period of a bunny is 35 days? And then suddenly we get sniped by a disc as we're looking through the binoculars. And then we get laid out like Yamcha. So, day 6 was trek. So I trekked all the way through the Mystic Ruins. There's Angel Island. That's kind of the end of the road for the trek. Past this, like I said, this one's going to be the rapid fire one because we kind of went over this one already. So this one, passport. We get up there, we get stopped by Knuckles. He's not going to let us through, but what if I have a passport? Well, then I guess we have to go through. So then we go on a hike past the Emerald Shrine and stuff. And then there's as a matter of fact, the sun, because it was actually not quite morning just yet, but there it is. Day 10, bit of a somber one. That would have been, especially in 2024, it would have been Digi's 29th birthday. He had just passed, unfortunately, about a month and a week before that moment. And so I'm like, I'm doing something Digi related for day 10 then, because this would have been his birthday. So it's kind of a reference to the Fast and Furious, where Paul Walker and Vin Diesel go their separate ways. Digi was getting into learning how to ride motorcycles and stuff too, so I put his character on a motorcycle, and there's still me and BT. But then I decided to keep his character around because I'm like, why not? That's the beauty of art is, in real life, maybe unfortunately he's no longer with us, but in art he can absolutely still be with us. And also it was funny because day 11 was snacks, and like I explained a couple times, he loved spicy foods, like eating the really really spicy stuff, and then hated like milk and celery and stuff, the things that you would usually maybe eat or drink alongside spicy foods. So we arrived at a very familiar pyramid. Some of you that have played, and I'll put it this way, I won't give it completely away, but if you know who King Boom Boo is, you know of this pyramid. Let's put it that way. So he's literally spitting fire, because he'll do that in a Discord call. We just be in a Discord call as he's gearing up to stream, and all of a sudden he'd just be like, oh, I'm going to try this California Reaper death, touched by death, and also kill death with a touch, crunch, and all of a sudden we just hear him dying. And I know I can visualize it too because I went to Panda Express once, and somehow a Reaper pepper got into my noodles that wasn't supposed to. I don't know how. So I just got a whole scoop of my noodles, popped in my mouth. The pepper was in there. It was a ghost pepper. My bad, not a Reaper. It was a ghost pepper though, but it wasn't supposed to be in there. Is the point? So I didn't think about it. Whole pepper goes into my mouth, and I just start snotting and crying everywhere, uncontrollably. I'm like, this is disgusting. I don't know what happened, but I'm gonna need the water. I'm gonna need the milk. So it's like that, but I imagine quite worse. So anyways, said pyramid from Sonic Adventure 2. So it's Eggman's pyramid. We're stealing a shuttle, remote. We use a remote control to remote launch a shuttle into space to a remote location, the Ark, out on the horizon there. We go up there, roam. I get lost. I do my Zorro thing where everyone else is just like, you're supposed to go this way. He went literally that way. It's going to take 20 minutes to get to this way. It was like 2. We're up there for a guidebook. But if you remember playing those stages from SA2, especially Rouge's one, Mad Space, the guides were always backwards and they were kind of weird that way. So there was that. Grungy. Yeah, that was a fun one. This was a fun one because, okay, so all of us are grunged up. But this is related to a picture. I forget why, but there's a shirtless picture of Aaronville from Final Fantasy XIV. I forget if it was sent by Capstan or everyone was sending it to Capstan. And I don't remember how I got involved. Oh no, because everyone keeps trying to make me Fantasia into a bunny in Final Fantasy XIV. That's what it is. And I'm like, well, Aaronville is right there, so you can just have Aaronville. And I'm like, okay, but you could just be that though instead. And I'm like, you know what? Bet I'll get in the perfect shape and I'll cosplay that for December. Spoiler alert, I just drew this instead. That's what this was. It was based off of that. So then you even have like Mioy and Lucy and people just saying like, ew, gross in the background. But I thought it was funny. I thought it was funny in universe, and I think it's funny out universe too. Sometimes it's just the funny stuff. We found Gerald's diary. We land the shuttle and then drift it onto the highway because that's how space shuttles work. When you're in charge, when you're drawing, you get to make up the rules. We even found a ridge, and we're still driving the shuttle just because the shuttle is now a drivable vehicle because I say so. And that's some of the creative freedom of doing art too. You can just make stuff up. And it can be just because it is sometimes. Sometimes something can just be because it is, right? Oh yeah, the rhinoceros, rhinoceros, if you will. Campfire, rust. So the city is Spinary, which is like binary, but like also spine, spiral and stuff like that. Still driving the shuttle. Still have BT, and Digi still has his motorcycle, as a matter of fact. Because we're on an expedition, just not 33. There's Scarecrow. So there was an enemy that I had created. He usually wears a hat. I didn't have him wear a hat this time because I thought it wouldn't be very clear that they were a Scarecrow. By the name of Black Stilts. They're not a good person. But the diary we got, because the thing that we decided to do, a couple of us, for Inktober 2024 was trying to make it a big consistent story. So it's a big consistent story so far. We all gathered, got to the Ark, got the data we need from Gerald's journal. Now we're going to take out Black Stilts. There's the hat, because like at this point, there we go. Camera, so different types of cameras, Polaroids, cell phones, Kodaks, all that stuff. We beat them, and then on the road trip home, it's time to go home. Jumbo, we left Pumpkin Hill, that whole area. Got lost, so we need a navigator. Thanks, Gammo. Violin. So there's two mountains to the south of the city that look like two people playing violins at the top. Again, because why not? And then landmarks. So in this city, which is like the capital city and from the story as well, the biggest building, which is literally the width of a city block, and the height is ridiculous. You can see it from very far away. The city's not small. That building is just massive. And it's a combination of the Seattle Space Needle and the Big Ben Clock Tower in London. Because I had a conversation with mechanics. I was like, okay, if you were combining the saucer section with, say, the clock faces of that tower, would you put the clock faces on the top or the bottom? We went with the bottom because if the building's tall enough, you can see the time anywhere in the city, and then also even from a distance. But if the saucer's under, once you get under the building too much, you're not going to be able to see the clock faces. So, there we go. So, there we go. And that was Inktober of 2024, which would then lead us into some other projects, now finally getting into 2025. So one of the first projects as we near the end of 2024 was Seal was streaming. They were streaming Satisfactory, I want to say. And I was like, oh, cool. Name a character. Name or name somebody we know. And so they named Juno, Q. I was like, bet. And so I decided to draw this drawing. Again, a lot of it, stuff I do, though, I've tried to do off of memory. So there's a couple things wrong with this, but I'm also glad with this because it's like, okay, let's just try drawing, though. Try drawing their character. We can explain stuff later if we need be. And that's the thing I did again this year. I haven't done that drawing yet because that's not... I'm not going to cower it out of it, but it's not going to help the allegations. I'll just put it that way. There we go. But that's a fun idea sometimes, too. It's like, hey, name somebody that we know. Boom. And then maybe name a thematic or a location or something like that, too. So this last one, for example, that I haven't done yet was beach because it was summer at the time. So I took a bit of a hiatus with video making after Digi's passing. So the last video I have that had Digi in it was when we went to VCAT in 2024. It was July 2024. It was a very hilarious day for several reasons. I've been dodging Zervis for like 4 months because they wanted a disc, and Steam invited them and didn't tell me. So that whole part one of that video was actually just going through VCAT with like everybody though. And then part two was what ended up being our match, as well as then we just had a battle disc day with a couple people, and then Digi happened to be there too. I bring this up because that happened in July, but this picture takes place not until December of 2024, because that's when I finally picked back up making videos, especially videos that still had Digi in them. So this picture though is also a parody of the one Steam drew of me versus Zervis as well. So I did one of Steam versus Zervis instead because I'm like, okay, cool, I could do that. I could totally do that, right? Yeah, especially because he instigates, but he's eventually gonna unretire for one day, he said, and fight any and everybody that wants to step up. So that's where this image particularly comes into play. It was kind of hard to do this one, if I'm being completely honest, because again, I wasn't really using references. I'm trying to remember like what is on the back of Shell's jacket. I don't actually remember. So we'll just throw the gear and then the S for Shell on the back of it, or for Steam, whatever way you want to go. There we go. Zervis, meanwhile, was a bit more fresh in the memory, and even then, there was still a little bit of things we could have did better there. But that's how this one came to be. Which then led us to this one. This was for Jero's birthday. They wanted all the Chaos Emeralds. I'm like, bet. I'll draw a tentacle with all the Chaos Emeralds, like Sonic Adventure 2 style. Live and learn. I'll do it within the same day, so the clock can't start on me trying to draw it until we actually hit the birthday. And so that's what this one was. I think I should run this one back, because I also think I could do it better, especially if I don't give myself the restriction of having to do it within the day, because that day also ended up unfortunately being kind of busy with some other stuff that I had to get done as well. So it wasn't even like I could spend the entire day on this piece. It was like, no, there's a couple things we got to do for the sake of getting it to him by the time his birthday was going to have not concluded yet. There's a lot of stuff I could have probably did more. They liked it as it was, and that was what counted the most. But we could make them a better version. Okay, so some of you might have not have seen an anime called Feeler. It's not Feeler McDealer. It's not Heal Me. It's not don't. It's Feel Me Healer. Don't hurt me, my healer. Oh my goodness, I actually remembered. I must be someone. I've replaced Gam. I'm not actually Gam anymore. I can't. Anyways, in that anime, sometimes we'll have anime viewings, and admittedly, I'll be working on stuff. I'll be in the call and I'll have the stream open, but I'll probably be tabbed out working on stuff. This one was different because the dynamic between the healer and the knight was related to the dynamic between me and Miyoi, which, in short, trolling. So what happened in one scene is this, and the thief for some reason was related to Capstan in this specific scene anyway. So I'm like, I'm going to do a joke drawing. I'm just going to quickly draw both their characters as the healer and the thief specifically. But then my perfectionism started kicking in. I don't know if you've done this. This happens again a couple times as we go through this journey. But I got to the point where I'm like, okay, my perfectionism is kicking in. So now I can't make it too jokey. I don't want to make it too serious, but I can't make it too jokey. I got to keep going. So it's supposed to be like a 10-minute drawing that took me like at least an hour, because I kept cleaning stuff up and be like, nah, that's not good enough. We got to do this. Oh, we got to do this. To this day, Capstan still uses that as her profile pic on certain places. As a matter of fact, it's been like over a year now, because this was actually 2024, or at least we started watching that anime in 2024, around the time with like Dan and stuff like that. I was like, okay, well, good thing that anime is never getting a season 2. And then they recently announced that anime is getting a season 2, so it's going to be depression all over again. It's great, really, except it's not. It's not at all. So now we're into 2025 proper. So I was playing Shadow the Hedgehog 2005, and then eventually I was playing Shadow Generations, which came out, October 2024. When we got to January, I forget why, but I was trying to S rank stuff, and I was still stuck on the Radical Highway, the last 2 levels. I forget how Steam came up as the subject matter, but it was like, what if different people had, like the Doom Wings powers, for example. So I took Steam, his character Shell, and I drew him with Steam Wings instead of Doom Wings. Made them hexagonal shape and stuff too. The Hawkbill Turtle, if you look that up. If you don't know, ask Steam about the Hawkbill Turtle. You'll get a lot of maybe artistic insight on a couple of design choices for some of the stuff that he's done. Which could also give you some, design ideas too, if you ever draw anything Steam related. So the quote that Shadow used was, "I'll overcome any obstacle with this power." So instead with Steam is he'll overcome any work blitz with this grind set, because he's always on that grind set. He's married to that grind set the same way I'm married to the mean streets, or the same way Etsuko is married to work. That's how that works. Pun intended. So I did that in like January of 2025. That was a fun one. That was a very fun one. It came out basically how I was hoping it would come out. I got to practice lighting on like the background especially too, because backgrounds I feel like are my weakness still, but I'm okay with how the backgrounds came out with these ones. Maybe because I could use the reference though, so I could figure out exactly what I wanted to do and compare it to when Shadow did it. Maybe that was, the brilliance of references. Then there's this one. If the very few VR chat streams I've done, this is like my not Be Right Back page, but it's a very accurate retelling of February 10th, by the way. If anyone says anything else, they're a liar, and that's such. They've been branded that way for a reason. This is basically what happened when you combine all of the matches. Like, we were there for a good 2-3 hours, so I understand where the whole first match thing is coming from. But explain the other 3.5 hours. Then any of y'all, I'll wait. You won't do it. Yeah, this is more of akin to what actually happened. There we go. So there we go. It was also kind of fun to draw Etsuko's character, like the circle, the happy circle, I think is what they call it, or a happy circle. It was kind of fun to draw because it's not a too complicated drawing, but it still feels like it's there's enough to it that you can still. Effort's not the right word, but it's like there's enough there to still feel like you're practicing, without feeling like, oh, I'm never going to be able to draw the complications on it, if that makes sense. Maybe that makes zero sense, but there's certain things where sometimes it feels good to draw because you can draw it. So then it comes down to not the perfectionism of drawing it, but just the nice kind of fun of drawing it. I don't think I'm making sense to artists or anyone at all. But yeah, the happy circle version of their character is basically fun. I mean, I'm saying it's fun to draw. I'm saying it's fun. It's a compliment. All right. It's a long-winded compliment. So with Niani's character, the head is inspired on an image that Kala Arts drew, actually, that Niani was using as a profile pic for a while. And so I was like, well, what if we sat down and kind of just designed your own, like, full-on character as best we can? So the head is inspired by that heavily, to be honest. I didn't, like, trace it or anything, but it is inspired by that design, because that's what Niani was using for the longest. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. It was black and white, so we came up with colors and stuff afterwards. The outfit, meanwhile, is a combination of Cammy White from the Street Fighter series, as well as Lightning from Final Fantasy 13, I believe. I kind of combine aspects of both of their outfits into an original outfit for Niani's character. But that's where this comes to existence for, is because it's something I've done for a couple people at a time, where I'll be like, oh, I'll do my best trying to draw that, so you can have something for now, and then in the future we can get you like in touch with like an actual artist, and then you can get actual stuff. So that's how this came to be. So I'm kind of proud of it, in the extent of, after like talking with Niani about like the colors she would want and stuff like that, I am happy with how it came out. I changed the hair a little bit because, like I said, I didn't want to copy Kala Arts like beat for beat. So there's some differences there too, but for the most part, it's a nice drawing. That I'll look to improve on as the years go on, and hopefully at some point Niani will actually be able to get like an actual artist to draw their character well. But they liked it, so that's kind of also what matters too. Sometimes when you're doing art for others, is even if it's not, I'm not saying like be complacent, but if you're drawing something for someone else and they like it, that kind of was the mission. So it is okay to be okay with it and still want to improve it in the future, fine. But don't beat yourself up too much if you can. If the subject matter or the person or the client, etc., is like, no, I love this, actually this is great, and it's like, okay, it's a good start. Sometimes you need a good start before you can build, after all, right? If you've ever built, you need a foundation. I guess it depends on what exactly you're building, the medium you're building, blah blah. Let's not get pedantic though, but that can be something that happens. That's when we're getting like March of 2025. And after doing this, and so I started using this whenever Niani's character would be talking in one of my videos, Blau approached me. Blau was like, hey, could we work something out there? Can I commission you to maybe draw my character? We don't have like a certain deadline or anything like that, but I think that'd be kind of cool, because I've slowly kind of been drawing people's characters so I could use them for that reason and some others. So I was like, yeah, sure. Poor Blau. We will get into a Blau section later on though, but I feel bad, buddy. So Mioi and Mioi's character specifically, right? So for whatever reason, right? Do I really have to go over the lore? Yeah, so there's the trifecta, okay? There's the hostage, the abandoned, and the victim, okay? And unfortunately, there's a lot of overlap with these three. But sometimes there's not overlap. One of those is pants, okay? I don't know why, but at least for the first two, they're pants haters, okay? The reason this is relevant is because for some reason a conversation happened and I went, boom, what if I draw them decked out in like Eskimo gear, which is like the most like heaviest, most outfit thing I can think of, right? So this kind of started as like a joke idea, but it was also kind of fun to practice a different thing with the shading on like the pants and stuff like that too. So the pants had to exist so I could practice shading on them. The jacket, for example, has shading on like the centerpiece and like the arms. It's not perfect, but I tried something different basically, and I kind of liked how it came out, so I could kind of learn from this. And so even though it was kind of started as a joke drawing because of like I said, that trifecta and stuff, it ended up being a nice learning lesson because I'm like, oh, I can maybe combine some of the things I learned from this with some of the things I previously do as we go forwards. Because this is like April now of 2025, so about 7 months ago now. Which then also leads us to me doing stuff like this sometimes. So this was for Odeman's birthday back in April, and right before his birthday had hit, he, Sarah, and I were all talking about Sonic Riders. From like 2006. Crossworlds was coming, and Crossworlds, as we now know, the Babylon Rogues were coming back, Extreme Gear was coming back. And so what I did in Discord in a call once was I just opened Sonic Riders because I have it, and I played through it with Odeman in a call. And so for his birthday, I decided to try and replicate the Sonic Riders art style. It's okay-ish relative to the art style. So the art style will have like the character will be lined by like a color, so maybe like dark red. And then some parts will kind of be hatched where it's just completely dark, and then the red color is like like you're doing hatch lines. And Sarah's character is again extremely complicated to draw, but not impossible, and not in a bad way. And then Odeman's character, meanwhile, is like the opposite. It's actually kind of very simple. So that's what I did for their birthday. Is I tried to do that. It was okay. There's a lot of things that as we're going through this, I'm realizing I could probably do better even right now, let alone say a year from now. If I'm going to redo this one, I might as well wait for the birthday next year, just in case. But yeah. All right. So this is where the fun begins. This specific event marks 1 year since I've had the tablet specifically. It was July, technically June of 2025. This idea spawns off of a conversation with Steam. So Steam's Discord server was originally called the Airship, okay? And as someone who started binging One Piece from the beginning, like just everything, every episode, filler, all of it, I noticed some similarities between how the Airship was structured, and also now it's evolved into the Armory, but how it's still structured, and One Piece. For example, there's 7 warlords in One Piece. There was 7 captains. These were the 7 captains at the time I was drawing this video. Etsuko, even though she's not on Discord, was the unofficial 7th captain. 5 vices. And the thing about the vices in One Piece is if you want to use a buster call, you need 5 vice admirals to do that. Like the authorization. At the time, there was the 5 vices. I was one of 5 other vices. Funny enough, things have actually changed since then. I think Pudding got promoted to actually as a captain, and then Osa got brought up as another vice. So we still have 5 vices, but now we got like 8 captains. So there's that. But the point is, this was a fun project because I had the conversation with Steam in VR chat during one of the mechanics meetups, and I was like, well, then, bet. This was just Mioi just as an Elden Ring character because they were playing Elden Ring with Zabel and stuff. Yeah, I remember. Also just a bunch of armor. Again, just as much on as possible. But here we go with this, right? And so these are all individual pictures that we're actually about to go into one by one. This was the main point of the art progress video in July. So all it ended up being 12 of us all had like a different section where I kind of went through what went into designing each person for this, which we're going to kind of briefly go into yet again. Yeah, this is what this was for, so I could have this shot when I edited the VR chat video about that mechanics meetup, about that conversation. This is actually what it culminated to was, and the reason why I wanted to do it was because in my mind, I saw this image where it had the different captains' names, for example, and each a letter from them side by side like this spelled out the word captain. I had to cheat a little bit. I mentioned this in that video. I want to mention it again. With Etsuko, I cheated, and then with myself, I cheated. I'll explain. So no matter which name I tried to use for Etsuko, there's no C anywhere in any of any of the names you want to try and use for her. So I faded out. All the letters are kind of like see-through, except for the one letter that needs to use to spell captain. So what I did with her is most of the O is still intact for the C, which is why they're over there on the far left. So then CAPTAIN, captain. And then with the vices, with my name is what I did that for. is I use the M in my name. I use the middle part of the M for the V for Vices. So Vices. It was like the coolest idea in my mind. That's also why I wanted to do this, is because captains and the vices. That's kind of how it was structured. That's kind of how it worked. I guess we'd have to do that different now, wouldn't we? Now that Pudding's been brought up and she was the I in vices, and Osa's been moved up though, we'd have to change that up because me and Bits have I's in our names, so one of us could maybe be the I. But who would be the V? Another time. But anyways, that was in my head what I envisioned. Now we're gonna go through each of the individual ones real quick here. So here we go. So this was the Steam one. Since I've drawn Shell several times, I decided to give him like a captain's as kind of like the mechanics being kind of like his brainchild after all. And it was also a good excuse to really look at the detail though on Shell again. Some of the stuff that I haven't really constantly done. Melodies was not that great. In terms of me drawing it, for some reason the bottom half, it just, no matter how much I tried to, it looked weird if I made it longer. It looked weird if I made it shorter. It looked weird. It was one of those, no matter what I changed, it just made it look worse. So I just kind of dialed it back to what I started with. It just doesn't look right though. So I'll redo that at some point. Senko's character was interesting because I didn't really have a reference to Senko's character outside of one frame from one of Steam's Inktober's drawings in 2024. I also wanted to make sure every character was doing, even if it was only slightly, a different pose, and I wasn't doing the exact same pose for each character. So I'm like, Senko, I'll give Senko a gun. There we go. Boom. Easy. There we go. Definitely going to be redoing Senko's now that I actually have a reference for Senko's character though. So then Q's character, I did draw, like we tried to draw again before. Remember I mentioned Sil was like, okay, try drawing Juno. It's like, bet. This time I had a bit more of an idea of what I wanted to draw. I was doing the cross arms thing, which could have came out better, but could have came out worse. And for the most part, I actually like how this one came out versus the previous one. It was a lot more, like accurate. And it was also a time where I also have started using references because, like I said, I didn't think references are like cheating or anything, but I always felt like if artists could just do things from memory, I should be able to do that if I want to show improvement, but one step at a time. We're trying to jump up an entire staircase instead of like taking the stairs properly. So references are fine. It's not tracing after all either. And even if it was tracing, if you're learning something, like tracing, I feel like and maybe this is a bit of a hot take, but I feel like tracing is a problem. If you trace something, try and pass it off that you did it from scratch and you're like in like a competition or something like that, where the integrity is going to matter. If you're just learning something, learn, okay? It's kind of for your own benefit. Maybe you need to trace something to learn how a shape feels, how the distance of it like is, and stuff like that, which is completely fine. And then in the future, when you maybe do want to start posting stuff for either a competition or for just integrity's sake, that's when you work on not tracing and doing the non-trace version, seeing what you've actually learned and stuff like that, by all means. But while this wasn't traced, I just put that out there real quick, is like when you're learning and it's just about you and you're not harming anyone else, use the tools you need to learn. By all means, people learn differently. Okay, so Kimple's was fun because in that conversation relative to like One Piece and the airship and stuff, I was like, okay, well then which captain would be which warlord? And Steam was like, Kimple would definitely be Boa Hancock. So with Kimple's character, when I drew them, I drew their outfit based off of Boa Hancock as well as the hair and everything. It was all based off of Boa. So that one was fun to do for that reason. And I also tried a different shading for Kimple onwards that I would go back on and use on the previous drawings too. Because I kind of just like the way it came out. Maybe it's also because Kimple is a cat robot, so the shading can look a little different, but I just kind of liked how it looked. Again, Sarah's very detailed character, which is fun, was like the turning point. If I could complete Sarah's character, I could complete the whole challenge that I set for myself, and we did. I used the same shading technique on the skin too, and I realized, no, I think I like this shading technique, so I will continue using that, at least in certain aspects. And it was fun actually drawing Sarah's character, like a proper version of Sarah's character too. Sarah is a very fun person, and their characters also, while can be complicated, fun to draw if you like the challenge. Alternatively, Creature's character is not too overly complicated, which is not a bad thing at any means. I think I still, even with the lack of complications, I don't like how the headphones sit on top of the head. But I also envisioned Steam and Creature's characters simultaneously when I came up with the ideas for what I wanted to do with both of them. So his character was actually pretty easy for me to at least draw. And it was fun too, because like green is something I haven't really used a lot of in anything really, because I usually make the background green if I need a PNG to green screen it out. Or at least that's what I would used to do. And and getting to kind of to play around with that was actually pretty fun too. Because even though this character is somewhat maybe simplistic on design, there's still like a lot going on there that's still worth noting and figuring out and getting an excuse to practice. Once upon a time, Seal asked, like, what would it look like if I drew their character in my quote unquote style? I don't know what my style necessarily is yet, but I was like, I can still do it though for fun. And so this also gave me an excuse to draw Seal's character. Now, there's a couple things I could nitpick about this. I think the arm should have been resting a bit more on the shoulder. I think the sword is a bit too short. I could make that longer. I think the hat, I think is actually bigger. So in the future I could redo that, but I think there was actually some fun stuff going on here, like figuring out how this part worked. This part was confusing me at first, and then I figured it out and it felt good. And sometimes that's a cool part about art, is when things kind of like feel good, when something like clicks or you figure something out. It's like, oh, okay, cool. So even though there's certain things I could nitpick, there's other things I'm like, oh, okay, actually I extremely like how this other part came out. Hands, for example, even, stuff like that. All right, I botched Bits' character though. I know I wanted to give Bits' character a gun too. I know that. But the hands kind of look a little weird. But I do like how I did the eyes. I mentioned this in the other video too, but I do like how I did the eyes on their character. And then I also put their Twitch name, like, with the kanji and stuff, and on the mask too. Partly as an excuse to not have to draw a full face. Faces are not my strong suit still. Pudding's character was interesting for me because I kind of combined how they look in like VR chat when we see them at the meetups, and with some aspects of how Steam's drawn them in binary rains as well. So that was kind of a fun excuse to combine a couple of stuff like that, like goggles. I like putting goggles on people because of binary rains. It's just a nice kind of touch. It's a little different. I do think the face is too small. I think I made her face too small. I can't quite tell, but I think maybe not the whole face with the eyes. I think I might make the eyes a bit too small. And that's why something maybe looks a little bit off. But otherwise, I kind of like how most of this came out. I kind of like how most of all of these came out, if for nothing else, for the learning aspect of it. That's probably one of my favorite parts for sure, is I just basically taking the shot. You can plan things all you want. Planning's great, don't get me wrong, but eventually you have to take the leap, or at least get your toes wet, as the saying goes, whatever verbiage you want to use, right? So part of this is fun for me because it was like all of these pictures so far, I had to eventually start or else I would never get anywhere. Because I can envision all the stuff I want. There's so many cool things I can envision too. But we're never getting anywhere until I finally, get the ball rolling. Funny enough, my character is one of the hardest characters to draw. I had several ideas and I couldn't figure out how to do any of them. So we finally settled on this, which the fun part of ever drawing my character is the hoodie for sure. My favorite part is doing all this. Now, this isn't sarcasm, because it's a lot of dots and I do these one at a time, so it takes a while. I was listening to the podcast episode of S&G, for example, and I was able to finish the whole podcast episode before I got done dotting all of these and all this, like this urban camo design that my hoodie has. But it's also fun because when I'm sitting down to do art, I'm sitting down to do art. I'm not looking for shortcuts necessarily. I'm not blaming others if they do, but it's kind of like video editing. Sometimes a video will pop up and it's like, hey man, I bet I could edit a video 5 times faster than you. And I'm like, okay, that's nice, but I'm not here to race. I'm here for editing a video. I don't necessarily want this to take forever, don't get me wrong, but I'm not trying to race, and just get it done. Like I'm here for the work. That's what I'm here for. It's, I guess, a weird concept for people. They call me a workaholic, and it's not true. And then Etsuko's. So Etsuko's, as I mentioned in the other one too, when we went over the Etsuko section in the other video, is hers was one of the most difficult ones to draw because I really didn't have references for her. So I had to kind of go it off of my mind. And the problem with that too, going off of memory, is the only real thing I remember, because I only saw her like once in VR chat. Technically saw her in New Year's briefly. The problem there wasn't necessarily a ton for me to work off of necessarily, because even in memory, it was mainly like, oh, there's Etsuko. Oh, there's a disc. Oh, there's darkness because I'm knocked out. A lot of times I make eye contact with people. You want to know where I was looking when it came to Etsuko? The ground, because that's where I would be after a disc would just take my ankles out. That's just how that worked. But I did remember bits and pieces of certain things. There's certain details missing now that it's been more time since this, and I have actually seen her in VR chat yet again. Also, she had this whole arc where she was in VR chat for like 5-6 weeks straight with horse racing and stuff like that too. So I had more chances to get more references, if you will. So I could do this better, which is why Steam has challenged me to do this one better. And I'm like, all right, challenge accepted, but that will be at a different time. But for what this was, I do still like it because I kind of combined the two outfits. I remember, like, now I know it's the Helldivers outfit, They have like the jacket and stuff like that, and the pilot helmet and the cape and stuff. So I combined that because I couldn't remember her sleeves, how that worked at all. So I combined that jacket on top of like the rest of the other outfit, which is also missing some stuff, but it works because again, it was mainly everyone was using references. And I was like, okay, yeah, references are fine. We can do this. And I got to Etsuko and I'm like, I don't got any references. It's got to be pure memory. So that's why I threw the goggles up there too, because I'm like, you know what, why not? And there we go. So yeah, that covers the Captains and Vices project from July. So now we move forward. So we'll touch on this real quick. This was a draw pile from July of this year that featured a couple of us, as a matter of fact. This was my section specifically, featuring things like the Space Colony arc, a couple of our characters like Mines, Shells, Melodies, Odamins, Q's, Zables, Etsuko's Happy Circle escaping the fridge, and there's a destroyed fridge in the background and stuff like that. And then Odamin likes to do this thing where he'll just draw little Odamins around everyone's pictures. He'll try not to get on top of them, like, you know, first of all, he'll make sure he's on a separate layer. But secondly, he's not going to draw on top of people's pictures, but he'll do that. He'll just put like little Odamins around, which is funny. It took me entirely too long to realize there was someone that joined named like Moon Guji or something like that. And it should have clicked immediately, but it didn't. And that must have been Etsuko at that time. I drew them escaping the fridge and fire and warm and stuff. And so they had to come in and draw cold, of course, because why not? But yeah, the thing about draw pile that's fun is like we kind of all had a different like corner and we would kind of just all draw. And that's the fun part about draw pile. So you had a couple people join. I think Jero joined at one point. Q, Steam, Odamin, you know, you had a couple in there. So it was fun. So this comes in August of 2024, the significance being shading and coloring. So I mentioned shading especially as one of my weaker points, I feel. So I drew this off of the back of a art workshop that was done with mechanics in the Steam's Discord server, where he kind of just talked about when he would color and stuff like that. And Q was talking about certain things too. That's when I learned that there's different ways you can use the pen in the tablet to begin with. Because for everything that I've drawn until this point, I just use the default settings on everything. They taught me this day about things like opacity, flow. The Photoshop, for example, has built-in brushes that are different than just the default brush. I thought every brush, if you wanted one, you had to either make a brush or you had to go get a plugin or something. I was like, I'll just do it. I'll just do the basic default stuff. No, like when Steam does a really cool like sketch looking style that kind of looks like I say like crayon. That's a built-in brush in Photoshop itself. So this was a character that I made that was based off of basically a combination of like a Gundam and then Omega as an E123 Omega from like Sonic Heroes and stuff. Relative to that story I was talking about, one of the things I would do sometimes with the story is parody certain things as an excuse to try and design new characters. And then, well, the new character would start as a parody and then I'd flesh them out into their own characters. So Destructus is an example of that. Where he started off as a parody of Omega and then I've been slowly fleshing him out into his own character and design. So that would be fun to go with that. And I was like, okay, that would be cool quick drawing too. So let's just try that. Which brings into a couple of different things like height wise, they're 9 feet tall, 274 centimeters for you centimeter loving folk. By now I've created rifle. So rifle stand for the Republic Independence Freedom League Enforcement. Basically the good guy faction of that story, which was a combination of a lot of different groups. That's what they kind of stood for. Liberating and freeing and making sure people weren't being subjugated by the bad guys. So the short of it was rifle. That's what it stood for. And it would give me excuses to draw more stuff like that. So in VR chat once, because I remember in Jero's stream, they were kind of mentioning it'd be cool if they could do like an art trade with Steam. They didn't feel like it'd be fair to Steam, but Steam's chill like that. So it'd be like, we know Jero's good people. We know he's not like a scam artist or something like that. You know what I mean? So it's fine. This is relevant to this because this is the combat gear. I did like a small quote unquote animation for it. And I'll get into why. I'm going to do a proper version though. This doesn't count actually as my entry for that. This is just a little smaller thing that I thought one step at a time. So anyways, there was supposed to be an art trade between those two. I talked to Steam about it. Steam was like, bet, I'm down to do that. When he's doing his next stream, when he's like drawing like Jay and stuff like that, somehow Etsuko and I get pulled into it. I try and negotiate that me and Etsuko can like be background character observers of said art trade, but that doesn't work because my negotiation skills are fantastic, except for when they're not. So that's how we got pulled into. So like now it's a 4-way, and that's a bit of a problem, or so I thought. But I felt like doing this in August because there was a chance that I was gonna have to possibly disappear for a bit, and you want to talk about abandonment. You wouldn't see me due to some certain situations I'm not gonna talk about. But I'm like, I can get this out really quickly though, related to combat gear. And since Steam with his drawing is like drawing all 4 of us, even though in the circle he made, like he was supposed to do Jero, I think Jero was doing Etsuko, I think Etsuko was doing me then, and then I was supposed to draw Shell. I think that's the way the circle went. But since apparently Steam's like, I'm drawing everybody, I'm like, well then I could draw everybody. So I did this short, like I said, animation instead. I say animation, and I'll explain in a second, but I'll let it play first. It's Unga Bunga Steam. I mentioned Unga Bunga Steam a while ago. That's why I needed the Pokemon thing too. But we'll let it run again and pause it in the middle. So what I did, so the most of it is basically this first 2 seconds, right? You have Etsuko's character, the happy circle, if you will, walking. That was fun. Did I mess that up? I sure did. Huh. It's fine. So that was 3 different images. I say 3 different images. Really, it was just the legs that I had to redraw so I could have a walking animation, quote unquote, right? And then I had to turn their head, which wasn't too terribly hard either. Steam's character was a still image, but it's moving frame by frame as they're walking. Jero is actually the only one that's actually transforming from a giant gelatinous blob on the ceiling, dropping down, stretching out into a tentacle. And it's all different combat gears. You have Unga Bunga Steam, which is like coconut armor and sticks and stuff. You have Etsuko's, which is like, maybe like modern day proper military stuff with the military cap and gear and backpack and rifle. And then you got Jero with the futuristic stuff, the futuristic patches and Gundam shield and Gundam beam sword. That was something I did in the afternoon because I was like, yeah, that could be something I could do real quick. It didn't take, I think this took a total of 18 or 19 images. So, especially because the bulk of the video is like, once Etsuko turns their head, that's really where the last image is made, really. The rest of it I just zoomed in because I put this all together then inside Premiere. So, boom, and then you just put, so it's like 18 or 19 images for like 4 seconds of video, and then a zoom in. And then there you go. Having it all go at the same time was definitely the most challenging part, but not completely impossible. And yes, I used the Chow Garden, the kindergarten music at the beginning. That was fun. So on occasion, I've started practicing like drawing thumbnails for videos. So there was the one where we did there's a map in VR chat that was like 1 gorilla versus 100 dudes based on that meme back then. So when I finally got to editing that video in July, when I did a stretch of VR chat videos, I drew this as a thumbnail. It's a gorilla with a bunch of VR chat logos in its mouth that it's about to crush with its jaws because it can do that. Then there was Helldivers, actually, as a matter of fact. So there was the 3-minute clip, the now infamous 3-minute clip of mine surviving for 3 minutes against for extraction, and freaking Etsuko using the extraction music every time they raid. So every time I hear that song now, I either think about this moment or I think Etsuko's raiding even if she's not live. It's like, well, that's weird. It's called conditioning. It's not good. But anyways, this was a thumbnail I drew from scratch. I drew the Helldiver. I drew the cracked visor so you see my flaming eye. I drew the automatons in the background on the snow. The background is actually one of my favorite parts because, again, I don't like how I do backgrounds, but I think we're getting better at backgrounds. So there was this one. And then there was this one, which is based off of, there's a Transformers movie in 1986. Some of y'all might not know. I am old. Am I? Let me walk that back a little bit because I feel like it's very easy to be like 20, and just be into things that were before you were born. So there you go. Never mind. Anyways, this is a parody of that cover of that movie where they're shooting up at Unicron, the planet eater, basically. This was the full video. So it's like a 38-minute video that has the 3 minutes in it, but also like that whole entire day, or the second half of the whole entire day. Technically, part 1 was the one of making Battle crash out. That was a 20-minute part 1. Then we get to this, which is part 2, which has a couple other stuff in there, including that raid moment that comes up in there, which is why I have some of the people that were in the chat or in the call with us as like constellations up in the sky. So Gamo, Tanks, Mioi, Steam was playing with us at one point, and then Etsuko raided at one point, so that's why they're all in there, because they're all in the video, because that's how that works. But I drew this too. It was the same thing, drawing the designs and drawing all of this. It was fun. It's fun, and I definitely will probably do that every so often. I'm not going to probably draw every single thumbnail, but every so often, I'm definitely going to draw the thumbnail. I even draw Zabel's character, my character, Niani's character. It looks different than the rest of it, but I drew those too. So everything here, I drew. It's fun. So September 2025, we have this, which is when Sonic Cross Worlds had its like demos and stuff coming out that you could play for free. We got together one night and played in like the Steam's Discord server. And so we had different mains, right? So Q was playing Cream the Rabbit, Steam was playing Jet the Hawk, Bill Turtle, and then Zabel was playing a lot of Amy Rose. So I decided to draw their mains as they would be if they were kind of combined with the outfits of their OCs. So this was a fun one to do for that reason. I like how that came out because I used to draw the quote-unquote SA2 style a lot. So it's actually got a little bit of a comfort zone as well. So then I would also do this, which was kind of like the SA2 like recap screens. If you played a level in Sonic Adventure 2 and you quit because maybe you had to go eat dinner or whatever, and you come back, there'd be like a little character intro. They'd be like, yo, I'm so-and-so, and this is basically what happened last time, and we're picking it back up. I learned how to do those screens a long time ago, so I was like, cool, I can apply that here too. It's cool. So I did that for each of their characters. I did that for Shell. I did that for Zabel's character, and I did that for Q's character. And what I mean by SA2 style is it's kind of like if we zoom in on the hand here, right? Maybe this isn't the best because it has the lines over it because of the recap screen effect, but essentially it was like there's be a color. You use like a dark color to shade the edges, and then you use a lighter color to kind of solidly line on top of those shaded edges, but like thinner. And sometimes there's a bit more complexity to it, but that's like the basis of that quote-unquote style. So that's what I used to always do, and that's why I feel like I need to get better at shading, because that's the only thing I've ever really done. So drawing Sonic characters, though, I'm like, well, if there's one instance to apply that, though, that would make sense. It's drawing Sonic characters. Let's just run that one back. So this is yet another example of like a joke drawing that I just could not complete. It also kind of happened to line up around when... let's just say late September. So Caldarians, right? The cheese, if you will, brother cheese even. I decided to combine that with Pyramid Head because of this Silent Hill 2 video involving Pyramid Head in a window. I'll just put it like that. But I'm like, I could do something like that. Combine that with some cheese and stuff, French. So we'll give them like the Broly pelt, but it's the French flag. There's technically 2 characters in this drawing, by the way. I'm gonna let y'all find the second one on your own time. But I was like, I could do that. That'd be a cool idea. Gotta make them look cool, And so I did, because I can, because that's what I can do when the pen is in my hand. So, but it was also one of those. It was supposed to kind of just be like a funny, haha, quick drawing. I'm like, well, now I gotta color it. I gotta do a background. I gotta style it. So we did the whole 9 yards, and it happened to line up around a certain specific date, let's say. So I was like, oh, that's cool then. You know what? I'm gonna put the extra effort in for that. Now let me explain. Shut up. All right. Sometimes when I'm making a video or doing something, I need to draw something pretty quick, or I need to draw something for a very specific reason. This is one of those situations where there was these Pringles, the Philly cheesesteak Pringles. Arai was like, you guys got to try these whenever they show up where you at, because they taste great, but they smell like feet. And I'm like, do they? Well, here's the thing. I did a video where I did, in fact, try them, and they did taste like... Have you ever had Philly cheesesteak Hot Pockets even? They kind of taste like that. There's like an explosion of flavor after you bite into them and chew them, but they actually do smell like feet. It's ridiculous. So I needed to draw feet for an asset for that video. But here's what I'm telling y'all to shut up. You can't be like, oh, it's so-and-so's, because no one rocks that color. There's no one we know that rocks that color. So you can't try and say it's someone's feet, specifically that we know. It's just general generic. That's why I did that. because I know y'all, and that's why I have to preference this in this part of the video, is because I know y'all. Y'all would be like, that's just so, it can't be like, it can't be Capstans, it can't be Mioys, it can't be anyone's we knows, because no one rocks that color. Checkmate. I got y'all because I know y'all, and I plan for these things. But I did want to still include this just because I don't have to include this, but it is one of those things where it's like sometimes that can be your inspiration for doing stuff, is like, oh, I'm doing this other project, and even if it's a silly, goofy, quick thing, it would be cool to have this idea for that. I've done, it's like the Porkins thing when I talked about TTT earlier and stuff like that, or the Zabel Omni-Man looking thing. Like sometimes it's fun to do goofy ideas. Not everything that you do, even if you're trying to seriously practice, has to be so serious that it stresses you. This is only stressing me because I know what people are going to say somehow already, but that's why that we got that color, because that's just like a baby blue. It's kind of like a light bluish, not quite light blue. I don't know how to call it actually, but it's a really nice shade of blue. I actually really like it. I'm more of like a red and black and all that stuff, but there's certain shades of blues, and that's one of them that I'm kind of like, I actually like that. At long last, we are finally at Inktober 2025. So we're Inktober 2025. Here's how this works. Day one was mustache. I wasn't originally gonna stream it, but I did. I kind of felt like, I think it was Etsuko's fault. Not in the mean way. That's gonna sound mean, and if it comes across mean anyways, then too bad. But I didn't mean it in a mean way for what it's worth. But I think it was like day one started. I think Steam streamed. I think Etsuko streamed, and I think she mentioned like when are me and Jero gonna do our streams, and I'm like, I did have other things to do that day, but I did have a window, like a late window where I could stream. So I'm like, well, why not? Why not? So I did, and so we streamed this one live, and so I did like Eggman's mustache, Gerald. The arc is actually, its wings are supposed to be the mustache of like Gerald's face that is based off of a character I made called Dr. Bacon, because in the story I was writing, I made them specifically so they could team up with Eggman, so they could call themselves Bacon and Eggs, like a wrestling tag team combo. One day, maybe I might flesh him out into a more original character, but his mustache, meanwhile, is like bacon strips. His goatee is like a bacon strip. His hair is like bacon strips going across the back of his head. That's the idea. And then I drew a couple of our characters that were in chat at the time, so like Zabel, Steam, Mioi, Etsuko, with mustaches. So that was fun. Day two tripped me up. Day two was Weave. And unlike last year with 2024, with 2025, me, Steam, and some others were like, we're not going to do it's one long story. We're going to just kind of do individual things. Or Steam was going to use it to flesh out Binary Reigns, for example. And then still maybe it might connect. It might depend. Because he is doing arcs, meanwhile, for Binary Reigns, that is connected story that he happened to do also in October. For me, instead of trying to do a combined story, I'm going to try and focus on the topic when it came up on a day and make a picture based off of that as well as I could. Weave messed me up because I'm like, okay, basket weave, weave hairstyle. So I gave one to Vapor, bob and weave, like boxing. I couldn't really settle. So I did all three. It's okay. But that's sometimes that happens in Inktober. You don't always, it doesn't always come out perfect. Day three was Crown. And I forget. I kind of remember why. I think as I was mentioning, I was currently struggling. Because I think Etsuko was asking again about how everyone was doing. Not in like a overbearing way, by the way. I think she was just... Because like when it comes to art, for all of the bullying and bunny slandering and all that stuff too, art's like the one like neutral ground, if you will. I don't think I've ever said anything bad about her art, for example. Or anyone's art, really. Art is a very fun thing to watch people do. It's a very complicated thing. It could be a very courageous thing for some people to put themselves out there. So that's one thing I don't really mess with when it comes to poking fun even. So I think that's probably why the conversation was up there in her chat to begin with. And so she mentioned Chow Karate and Chow Racing. I'm like, bet. I could actually do that idea for a crown. Like, because when you do the race or you do the karate and you win, you get put up on the pedestal and stuff. And I gave people crowns relative to the place they got. So you got the regular Chow coming in second place, getting the big crown. You got the hero Chow coming in third place, getting the second, but still kind of complicated crown. You got the dark Chow coming in fourth place, getting the little mini crown, because you got Etsuko over there in the corner, since they recommended the idea, getting first place, and then a bunch of stars behind them, because why not? But then I also got a second idea, and I'm like, well, I still got time on the clock, so we're going to do the second idea too. King Battle, and Queen Mioi with them, as a matter of fact. That was a fun idea. I had this idea kind of from a Minecraft situation where I was gonna make kind of like in Minecraft, I was gonna make Battle of King of like diamonds, because that dude somehow got Digi's luck when it came to finding diamonds, and it was insane. So he deserved that one. And every king always has a queen behind them, as the saying goes, or something like that, right? Behind every great king, or something like that. Okay. But anyways, yeah, so that was the idea for that one. That's where this one came in. Blau was like, I should color this one at some point. So yeah, at some point I'll color this one. That would be funny. It would be funny. So for day 4, murky, right? So it lined up on that VR chat mechanics anniversary 2-parter that we recently did the videos on, right? So we had the part 1, and then we had the part 2, and then the part 2, if you remember, in a certain section we had the part of the midnight bar, with the drinks. And the fun part about that, actually, on an insider note, is OBS didn't capture the blacking out, not the blacking out effect, but the spiked effect, or whatever you want to call it, with the creatine and stuff. So I had to try and recreate that in the video editing software with like things like an echo effect and stuff like that then didn't really want to render at all. So that video was fun to make for a couple of reasons, and that was one of them. Actually, was just kind of figuring out, okay, well, now I got to recreate this effect, because in OBS it didn't capture it, so it kind of looks a little funky. It captured the sound and like the reverb and stuff, but not the visual effect. So because of that, I was like, all right, bet. I'm also doing that for Murky for day 4, and you couldn't see through some of those drinks, but they were. I kind of want to do something a little different, because I feel like a lot of people were going to probably do like swamps and stuff like that, which is fine. I'm not knocking other people's idea at all, but sometimes I want to challenge myself to do something a little different, and so that gave me a perfect idea, funny enough, to do something different. So on one hand, there was a lot of blacking out. On the other hand, it was a great time because it gave me some inspiration to do ink for day 4 of Inktober. Oh, day 5 was Deer. So there's this song. You may have heard it before. The first time I actually heard it was actually a FNAF version of it. You know the line, that bump. It looks like a deer. Yeah, so we got a couple of us riding around. Don't question what exactly we're doing, but we're riding around. And there's a deer. And the way I wanted to do this one specifically too was I wanted to make the deer dark, but still have some detail on them. That's what I did. This was pretty straightforward. Some of these aren't going to have a lot of talk into them, because there's not necessarily a huge lot of like design philosophy needed. Then there's day 6. So day 6 was Pierce. So for those that keep forgetting, because I feel like people have forgotten, the day 1 campaign has been what? Hashtag what? Justice for Etsuko. That's always been the end game since the start. I think some people have forgotten, actually, and they need a reminder sometimes. Also, again, it's kind of that concept of, I'm the one drawing, so I get to make the rules. So I did this one where they finally got their justice. There is no not doing it. There is no getting abandoned. There's just, it ends. There we go. GG's, as it would have been. But also what's kind of fun about this was to try something a little different. Was instead of just doing like just a drawing, as we kind of done with, like, say, this one, where maybe I kind of colored the deer a little bit, I want to do a little bit of the opposite, where I take a lighter color as kind of like the thing that was getting colored in, and maybe I color in the background like I did, but also kind of actually utilize white. And so the ink essentially was being used to draw the stuff, but also color in the background solidly, for example, behind mine, as a bit of like a contrast, if you will. So that was like a kind of fun reason to do this too. I hadn't drawn Etsuko since the captain thing. And if you recall, I didn't have references back then, as I did by the time she had now at this point been like 5 weeks deep into a VR chat arc that lasted like another week and a half at least. So I've definitely seen more of her more often to kind of try and draw more of like the outfit and stuff like that. Like I realized how the sleeves kind of worked actually at this point. I realized where the katana, because I thought the katanas were sitting inside like that rope. I don't know what the proper term of it is, but there's like a rope around her waist. And I've seen people have that in their designs before, and that's how they would hold their swords. But then I looked a bit more, and I was like, oh, hers aren't actually in the thing though. So there was a couple things that was fun about Inktober, and it was also just getting an excuse to draw some people's characters that I'd never really drawn before. And have an excuse to try and force myself to we're definitely drawing this. We're not backing out of this. We need to take that step of trying. It's not about succeeding. It's about trying, or as Etsuko would say, establishing like good habits. For example, it's not necessarily, it's not a competition. I'm not drawing these in a competition against like Steam or something, or graphic, or somebody who has a degree even in graphic design and art and stuff. Right? It's just that's what Inktober is. It's what you make of it. And so there we go. But yeah, GG's. There we go. And this particular, for this moment in this universe, whatever reason why, they got their justice. There we go. Sometimes I'd mention that I would like be like, oh, name someone we know, and then maybe like name a topic or location or something. And since it was the summer, it was like beach. And so the person that was named when I asked that question again was Etsuko. I'm like, I'm not drawing beach Etsuko. That's not going to look good at the optics at all. But then I got an idea once we got to day 7 starfish that I could do that one, quote unquote, cheat that one, if you will. But also there's the whole jumping with the stars and stuff thing now, thanks to Steam and that drawing and his streams and stuff. So I could combine several ideas into one. So I could use the happy circle, give them floaty tubes and stuff, even jumping and catching a starfish at the beach. And then boom, there we go. Like I make the rules at this point. So I can make the rules up and I can change the rules as I see fit. And so I did. And so I was like, okay, now I can check off like 5 different boxes at once, and it's great. But also it's kind of fun because sometimes with a drawing, I did most of the details on the starfish. Everything else is kind of like, not generic, but it's simplistic because it works as it tells the story it needs to tell. Well, the starfish is the focal point, so I put the most into the starfish, and that was fun. And that sometimes can happen with, I think, drawing too. As long as you convey the idea that you're trying to convey, you can take that as a success if you're struggling with yourself, essentially. I feel like that's a fair thing to do. And then you could always draw it again later. If you feel like you can make it better later, by all means. But sometimes maybe it's just about getting the idea out first. A saying that's going around for a lot of people that you might have heard from a lot of people or said yourself, make it exist first, make it perfect later. There you go. This is a good idea for that, for example, where I could draw this better. I would always draw the happy circle version though, but I could do this better. Call me a coward again. I don't care. I do not care. I'm not doing that. The optics won't work. There's already too many allegations, all right? We're going to court a second time. But this one, speaking of allegations, reckless. This one has to do with this bad boy. So this bad boy, we call this bad boy Bombshell, aka Firebomb. See if I hit the backlight, I don't need to make it bright. It just needs to be bright enough that you can see the light coming up under the screen because the phone is starting to it's a spicy pillow. It's a spicy pillow waiting to go to sleep for the last time. Okay, that's a long story short. So it's considered pretty reckless to have this bad boy around. So it's swollen even more in this picture. And that was my screensaver at the time. Shadow, I got an S rank in Tokyo. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, I started smoking for some reason. And then the next shot down there is the funeral where you have several people that are like, hey, we tried to warn them. So you got like Jero, Seal, Steam, Piece of Cheese, Z, because they were all there during the Unleashed stream. I did Sonic Unleashed back in July about it. And then you have Capstan being happy because they're free now. And then you got Etsuko being happy because warm, because the source of the cold is dead. Because again, I get to do that and no one can stop me. But also, yeah, it was fun because it's like, okay, here's the topic. You have a day, draw whatever. And so I was like, cool, okay, well then let's maybe we can just pull from stuff. And that was one of the things we could pull from was the cell phone. So there we go. Day 9 was heavy. So some people would have went like weights and stuff, and I'm not knocking that, but I went with more of a heavy topic, which was the fact that it was coming up on the 1-year anniversary of what would have been Digi's birthday, about a year and a month after his passing. So he would have been 30 this year, the big 3-0, and it would have been very, very fun to see him hit his 30s because the rubber would have met the road in terms of like his workout habits and stuff like that. If things would have came back to hurt, or because he had an insane amount of luck, nothing would have been a problem and everything would have been just fine. But yeah, that was a bit of a heavy topic for that. On what was day 9, for then day 10, which would have actually been his 30th birthday itself. Sweep, I went for the clean sweep, like in a game or something like that, sports, etc., where there's a couple of us laid out in TTT, and because every time him and Z-Box were trader buddies, they had a 100% win rate. So you got Lucy that got taken out because she got killed in the back, because that was an often thing that they would do is you take Lucy out when she's not looking because she was intelligent, and so if you're the bad guys, that's a smarter person down. Me and Graphic are laid out like Yamcha because chaos. You had Zabel missing part of their face because they used the zombie vault, got turned into a zombie before they were killed. Then you got Mitchie and Gammo laid out over there too, with Gammo saying happens because that's like their catchphrase. Poor Mitchie's in the trash can. There's a reason I put him in there. It's because people like to dispose bodies. That's what it was. So that was a way people would do. Sometimes if there was a dumpster or something, you just put someone's body in there. If they never found it, then there you go. So Digi wouldn't try hard, but if he ever did try hard, he usually would clean sweep the round, especially if he had his 100% Trader Buttery winner, Z-Box. So there we go. TTT was a good time. I'm going to miss the fact that we're never going to get to play it with him again. But, man, we really perfected the goofiness and being silly and stuff and being casual and just for the fun of it by those final stretches. So day 11 was Sting. This is a character from said story. I have not really delved into them too much. There is some importance to their third eye and my left eye. However, the sting of betrayal, stinging worse than the cold, if you will, as in the actual temper. I don't know what kind of, at this point, I don't know what cold Etsuko means. I don't understand them at all, as a matter of fact. They just every time I think I maybe have an idea, they flip the script and they're a bit of a wild card. But talking about like the actual cold as in temperature wise, that can sting. Like as much as I don't complain about the cold because I live in a northern state, there is a point where it does get too cold even for us. Just like people that live in the hot areas, you could ask them. It might be a high number, but there'll be a point where they're eventually like, after this point, it does get like a little uncomfortable, I'll admit. Same thing with us, right? There's a point where it's just like, okay, it's not fun anymore. It's not fun anymore. Okay, this is a bit much. But this is related to a character that is important to my character, as a matter of fact, for reasons I won't get too into right now. But what was fun is I've envisioned this character, but I've never actually drawn this character ever anywhere. Combined with, I got to use, like I said, I almost say like Crayola style, kind of like you're using a pencil to color on their face up there and then my face in the bottom corner over here to give it this kind of stylistic look that I wanted for this picture. Yeah, there's a story to tell there. It's not being told right now, but there's a story to tell there, and we'll maybe know about that more in time as I draw more characters from that story. Speaking of, day 12 was shredded. So in that universe, there are like I don't know. I gotta think of a better name. Their working name right now to just best understand them is there's regional warlords. All right. And there's kind of one for almost every continent. But they all work together. They're bad guys, but they all kind of have a network and work together. So the one that's over in Asia, for example, it's a combination of the word Musha and China. So Mushina, if you want to, or Mushina, if you want to, would be their name. Because they're from China, essentially. The way some of the warlords work is they work, or they're even made by or from a specific country to terrorize other countries in the area. Some of them have gone rogue, though, and they don't really kind of listen to the country they're from, or they're doing their own thing, or they're acting in the best interest of the country they come from, in spite of the country they come from saying not to do the things that they're doing. There's story there, but the point is, Zabel's character, at one point, would wash them, at least eventually. But his henchmen are absolutely nothing compared to Zabel's character. Zabel's character would run his whole army over. So that's what this basically is. He's shredding his whole army. Zabel, at least in one of the concepts, he has like blade arms that can come out of his arms. It opens up and blades come out. And he can just kind of go through slicing people. So even though the regional warlord himself is actually rather tough, his henchmen, which are usually tough to most people, are like nothing to Zabel's character. Zabel's character would run his army over. So I was like, cool, we'll just do that. It'll give me an excuse to also draw Zabel's character again, because I haven't drawn them in a minute. At least not as a full character, or at least that wasn't like the Omni-Man drawing, which was like a joke thing. It's like, let's draw a bit more of like a serious version of his character. Let's see what we can do there. Day 13. Oh, this was Drink. So the thing about Drink, it happened in a Steam chat, or Steam's chat during a stream. I forget what was being talked about, but unlike the Midnight Club, I wanted the blackout drink because I didn't want to bother with the conversation that was going on. So like I was basically telling it to go like pass me one of those Sugar Rush blackouts, and it was actually just water. I was hoping it was actually not, but it actually was just water. So that's where this one comes from. So it's me drinking what I'm hoping is just water, and so it's them being like, yeah, it's just water. And then they've been on this kick where they want to hug. They don't hug. I've had this conversation with people now. They don't do that. And so this is some sort of trap that I haven't figured out yet. So I say no. I'm not falling for it. I don't know. I just don't know what the plan is yet, but I know there's something there. But that's what this drawing was based off of, that, where it's just like, oh, this is actually just water. There's no trick. There's no trick. There's no devious scheme this time. What the heck? But no, they're not getting hugged. No, I don't. Maybe it's melee range, because when you think about it, a knife is a nice small blade. So you go to hug somebody and you can get them in the back, and you don't have to risk hitting you like you would with like a sword or something. That must be it. Okay, never mind. We figured it out. It took me doing this to figure it out, but we figured it out. That's what this one was, the drink. It was based off of that conversation. That's what I mean. Like sometimes I'll screenshot conversations and it'll give me ideas later. That's what this one was. This one, day 14, was trunk. So I had this idea of these creatures that are basically elephant. They're trunks elephants. They're elephants and they're also trunks because they have trunks and they're elephants. Their heads are basically trunks. They also have trunks hanging off of them. And they're possibly mecha and organic. We don't actually know. They're kind of a bit of a mystery. Especially because their storage space is seemingly infinite. It makes no sense. Where the ears are actually like cogs on and they have the trunk head, but they have the trunk that they pick stuff up with. A small pack of them could actually hold up an entire city. So the strength makes no sense either. It was like a fun excuse to kind of draw something a bit on the mythical side, I guess, if you will, of an idea I had once. Day 15 was ragged. As her city burned, she realized no one was coming and they would be forgotten. So this has to do with a city that was designed in that universe where, because of a past situation, this city became a bit of like an isolationist situation. But over time, they started opening back up again. What they counted on was eventually being able to make bonds and stuff and kind of open back up like the olden days again. So this person, this character, is the protector of the city. But what happened is a force, this city, and the reason it exists is because as a bit of as a plot point to introduce this other faction that came in invading, and they were expecting to invade like everybody. And this was going to be the starting point because they're like, oh, we're going to target the isolationist city here. No one's going to care about them. So we'll have an easy foothold in, and then we'll spread out from there. So, as tragic as this picture looks, the story that goes with it, actually, spoiler alert, is because prior to this invasion, they had started opening back up again. They had started making a couple of those bonds. So by the time this invasion hits, initially they're on their own, and they're getting blitzed, but they don't stay that way. Some of the people start rolling through, and it turns out they actually have made some of those connections. It's kind of a bit of a couple stories being told in one. And then said faction that thought they were just going to have an easy win here to spread out gets kind of hard stopped. And then it's like, oh, it kind of escalates from there. So this looks really bad. But I guess for those of you wondering, spoiler, they do survive. They do survive this situation. But they weren't supposed to. And it didn't look like they were going to. But that was actually one of the stories being told, is these efforts that were being made to connect, to bond, etc. And what the results of that effort can be. Day 16 was blunder. So Lot, Lotiver, if you will, Lot_VR. Lot likes to blow themselves up in all kinds of games we play and some of everything. So I drew them also blowing themselves up, but they survived. The only thing that didn't survive was like their glasses, and that's mainly because I forgot to draw their glasses. But because I was doing this, because of the the explosion, like as Looney Tunes style, it works out. You could just say the glasses got lost in the blast, if you will. But them and their smug face survived, so it's all good. But they do. That's why in mechanics, when Steam was drawing Lot's character in the Binary Reigns universe, Lot lost her left arm and has it's a really cool looking robo arm though. But that's why they blew themselves up. Day 17 was ornate. So the European guardsman of old was ironically chill and humble, and that's a play on the fact that EGO, if you put that together, is ego. But despite that, they were pretty chill and humble. Drawing this was a bit of a fun but interesting experience because I drew each and every one of these bits because I was trying to think of like how to do ornate. And it was fun because I'd never done any ornate-esque drawing before, and it was a good way to tell of another character. So like, just like there's the regional warlords, there's their opposites, which are the more benevolent versions. And this is an example of one of, not actually just one of, but also the oldest of them. So if you have some of those that were the bad guys for these continents and regions, you have good guy versions essentially that also exist and can be summoned, if you will, or will already be there because they know where to be. And this was the one for Europe. This one, when stuff happens, he knows what's going on and he will be there. But they're also actually an incredibly chill guy. When you've been around for centuries, you kind of mellow out, basically, is the idea. Oh, day 18 was deal, a 5th filing cabinet. So 4 filing cabinets were used with all the deals that were made across TTT and stuff when it came to Lucy and whatnot. So I was like, why not make a throwback? It'd be a fun excuse to draw her character. Why not we do a throwback, a 5th filing cabinet, a 5th deal, if you will. Especially now that she has her character design, her newer one, if you will, her original character, I should say. I kind of messed up on like the bottom half of this, as a matter of fact, because the way the skirt should work, it should technically be like flipped up more. I didn't want to do that. So I was like, okay, I'll just angle the picture down. But then I did that, but didn't angle the legs down correctly because they're crossed. So that's something, because I also wanted this like slanted angle for the picture. I could do that better. I probably will do that better. At some point, I'll probably redo this picture and color it and everything. So spoiler alert. But for the time being, for this particular day, that was fun. To kind of a throwback idea, a throwback joke, inside joke that's been around since like 2021, almost a half a decade ago, once we hit to 2026. Now, this one was fun. Seal can get a pass. Seal can get a pass because they might not know about this, which is also why I'm making a video, because then, like I said, it's more accessible. People can come to this video to see all of the stuff that I've done now. Steam should have known better, though, when him and Seal were roasting me for my wording in the Gen chat. I'm like, Seal, I can understand. Okay, fine. Because maybe you don't know the context. But Steam knows the context. It's one thing if I say something and you don't know the context. It's still on you for taking it wrong, but at the same time, I would like be like, but you know, it's calm. When you know the context and then you still take it wrong, what am I supposed to do at that point? I'll wait. You'll answer, and it'll be a wrong answer, so I'm not going to wait any longer. We're going to continue. But the point was, for day 19 was Arctic, and I had a couple different ideas I wanted to do for this. One of them was the background. I really wanted to do an Arctic background because I hated doing backgrounds, or I hated how backgrounds would turn out when I would do them. I hated how poorly they looked. So I wanted an excuse to push myself to do a background anyways. I also wanted to make sure that I did a full entire Etsuko body, essentially. I want to make sure I do that from time to time, not just her, but like just in general, because I feel like in the past, I've definitely cut characters off at certain points. You can even see that back here with the ornate, right? It was cut off at the chest, basically. But I want to make sure I do this kind of idea more often, where it makes me not, basically I'm not allowed to cut corners. I have to draw a full entire character or else it's not going to work. But so if we start with the background though, spoiler, I could be zooming in this whole time, huh? Zooming in, the freezer. Yeah, it's been diced to ribbons. Sliced and diced. I gave them a sword because I noticed they had the swords. This sword's based off of like the same design as a battle disc though, since they had the red one. So I just did the sword the same exact way as that. You know what was actually also pretty cool? With all the colors that were going on, the eyes and the nails, actually, this color right here is actually really nice, and I kind of actually like it. It's a bit of a side note that doesn't really matter for like every single picture, but sometimes you'll notice that where you'll draw a character, they'll have like 2, 3, maybe 4 main colors, and then maybe like the eyes or something is like a different color. And then you see that maybe again like with the nails and stuff like that, if they have nail color and stuff like that. The Akatsuki come to mind too when I think about them from Naruto, how they have like the red and black cloaks, but they all have the nails too. And the hats, sometimes it's the straw-esque hats. So that was actually a really cool little detail. Also, it makes me like drawing hands a little bit more if people have nail colors. Sometimes I'll draw a hand, it just looks okay at best, and then if I add nails on there, it looks better, which she has nails. She has nails and that color. So that's why that's like that. But it's one of those things too where sometimes it's just me maybe, but sometimes I'll draw hands, and if I can't draw a glove or nails, it just looks like off to me until I can figure out how to draw hands better. Yeah, so this was one of the things, was the background. So like a blue color, some lighter blues, a little bit of a turquoise, and then some whites on the top for the ice. No, the cold didn't bother her, at least this time. Hot soup, nor tea, nor hugs included. Give her one. Yeah, one of y'all can handle giving her the hug then. But this also was based off of Steam and Binary Reigns has mine and her character on a mission to get this never freezing ice, or it never doesn't. It's never not cold. It's something like that. So it's a little bit inspired by that, which is why we have this third character over here, the Crunch, if you will. But also, again, I get to do this thing, which is kind of cool, where I get to just make people. I get to envision an idea and then just make that idea, and I cannot become patted on that. So in this idea, they're just strong. It's not based off of that as a 1-1, because that one is currently on a hiatus, as a matter of fact, of Ice and Fire. Steam's gonna finish it at some point, but right now we're just out there ore farming, um, playing patty cake or something. I don't know, but he'll get to that when he gets to that. I'm not gonna rush him. He has stuff to do, and it's really cool to see how his universe is developing. But that's also where this idea was partly from. But I knew I wanted to do something about them beating the freezer and the cold in general, because I can. If you thought I was going to pick up a stylus or a pencil, and not draw everybody being the coolest version I could of each and everybody, then you got another mistake coming to you. Do you think I was going to use whatever skills I developed for evil and make it all suffer? Why, that would be completely in my wheelhouse. Not this time, not with art. With art, I think I'm going to go a bit of a different, lighter direction, where I instead, it's kind of like the Star Wars, like the 2003 Clone Wars, where it's just the rule of cool for everybody, even if it just didn't make sense. So unfortunately for y'all, if y'all disagree with any of this, then pick up a pencil yourself. Pick up a stylus, pick up a tablet, get to drawing. Come on now. You want to change it, then change it. Make your own. That's how this works. I get to do what I want to do, but you get to do what you want to do, and I can't stop that. That's the point. But if you thought I was going to make, because I was talking about how excited I was for this one, and so some people thought I was going to make some sort of art of like Etsuko just absolutely suffering. I'm like, why would I do that? Again, what was the hashtag? You've forgotten already, haven't you? Understandable, but that's the point. It's like, no. But yeah, I was kind of like, cool. It gives me also on a personal level, an excuse to check a couple boxes. Backgrounds was one of them for this one too. But no, unfortunately for y'all, even her, I plan to, when I do these drawings, to make people usually in a position of intelligence and or power, even if it's a serious situation. So, unfortunately, that even means in this situation, no, the cold doesn't bother them anyways. Now, yes, you could look at the fact that Steam and Capstan came together to make a bit of art genius that was the Batkini. And actually, spoiler alert, I lied completely. Everybody, and I mean everybody, including myself, I'm going to be drawing by this time next year in the Batkini. So, sorry. Now, this is how you learn that. Because Steam and Capstan decided to do that, I'm deciding to unveil that now. It's unfortunate, really. But yeah, that's going to be a thing in the future, obviously. But no. But yeah, this was fun. This was fun for a couple of reasons, too. Also because, and I kind of skipped it, I have to go back to it. I made more emotes for myself this month, and just by the time I got to day 19, having now drawn Etsuko several more times than I'd ever drawn her, period, there's certain patterns that are starting to develop, for like, for example, drawing the hair even, that I'm like, oh, okay. Because she used to use the unit finder with her streams. And so at least that would kind of be there too. And it's not been there for a minute, which is her business. It's totally fine. But I'm saying like, okay, so maybe I could have looked there, but I haven't been able to. But again, the VR chat happened where she actually came to a mechanics meetup for like the first time, maybe ever since we started doing these, which is it's kind of funny. Steam, this part's for you specifically, actually. I noticed something. So the cave froze over. Now, the reason why is a mystery. We don't actually know why. We don't know who's to blame, but it froze over by, funny enough, this part. By day 19 Arctic, the cave froze over, right? So the genius there is it lined up thematically. But what happened, and why I'm talking to you specifically right now, Steam, when it unfroze, for the first week when it at least started thawing and Etsuko was back, for that first week, she streamed as early or even earlier than the start time has been for the mechanics meetups. Meaning, we can no longer make fun of the possibility of her attendance at these meetups anymore. Because what she low-key was proving, even if unintentional, was she could be around for them. And so if for some reason some smack is being talked on any given month, for a week straight she showed, she could be around at that time. So, just saying, something that I noticed to keep in mind Not that we really ever make fun of her attendance specifically. It's more like if we ever got into a banter situation and it happened to be during when a meetup was coming up, it's like, well, they kind of proven that they could be there, even though it's not moon time, it's her time. So if she wanted to, that is. Just something to keep in mind. But yes, just to prove that she's winning there, I put the foo-foo up there. That's that. I don't think she's ever said that in a moment of suffering, by the way, in case someone's like, well, how do we know she's winning in this fight or this picture? That I covered that. I know y'all, so I covered all that. But this is one of the ones I'm the most proud of, and it's actually because of the background too. I just really, this was the first time I drew a background that I kind of actually really liked. Day 20 was Rivals. So they're in this story that I was telling. There's the regional warlords and stuff that's related to Earth itself. And the grand universe, though, there's like these end bosses of the universe, and there's also these guardians of the universe. I'll probably have to work on their names again, because when I first named them was when I was like 13. So I want to name them something a bit better. There's nothing TOS, but I just think I can do better now that I'm older. Day 21. So I did stream again. I don't usually do art streams, and I try not to do art streams except for around the time where I think the people that would be interested or have been asking for art streams could be around. This was a bit of an exception though, because I think of the three people that come to mind the most, so like Etsuko, Jero, Steam. Steam was the only one that made it to this one because it was a bit impromptu. Etsuko, the cave was frozen at the time, so there was no way she was going to catch this. And then Jero, I think, was battling sleep and stuff. So sorry about that, Jero. But I did stream this one, and it was kind of rough because I was kind of mimicking the Ark's position when it shot and blew up half the moon. But it wasn't the exact same shot, so I couldn't use that picture as a reference. In my mind, I was trying to turn it for a different angle to practice a different angle, and I just could not make the Eclipse cannon look right no matter how hard I tried. But that was still a fun stream, though, for a lot of reasons. Doing this kind of like background where I decided to make the background black, and so I left the image white, for example. And the drawing of it, like the Ark, I've talked about this, is a lot of circles. It's a lot of circles. So if you really want to practice shapes, practice the Space Colony Ark. And different shapes. There's a lot of triangles, circles, a couple squares even. Throw the moon in there for good measure for some extra, shape practice. And you can get a lot of, like, I won't say fundamental, but the Ark is actually pretty good at drawing and getting some practice in for just some shapes. This one was fun. This one was Button. And so what came to mind was that whole cliche when someone's like Button flies off their shirt because either they ate too much or like their chest too big, whatever, right? But I'm like, I like doing funny stuff. So let me take that idea. So I just made generic character with Button shirt. Button goes flying off, smacks me in the eye, knocks me over. But when I get back up, for some reason getting smacked into the eye with a button has turned me like into a Coraline, like Muppet character. It makes no sense. Also an excuse to throw some cameos in there. So I threw some cameos in there with Seal, Etsuko, and Steam. But I made up generic fourth character. They don't actually exist. They just existed specifically to make this joke because I'm like, oh, I could do that. Yeah, haha, funny. How can I make it more funny? Muppet. We're just a Muppet with button eyes now. No one knows why. Day 23 was Firefly. So there's this idea I had of a prototype Firefly flight suit. It's kind of reminds me, I guess, of Firefly from Batman when I think about it, but it was more like a sentient suit instead of someone wearing a suit. It was started off as a prototype suit, but it became sentient through a means that has yet to be explained, actually, as a matter of fact. Day 24 was Rowdy. So once Steam started aura farming on the goalposts, the crowd got rowdy. Cheering or booing, no one could tell. So instead of scoring, Steam just got up on the goalpost, and it's just aura farming up there, while you have several of us also just in the crowd. That was just a funny idea, because aura farming. So you got like Cherry, Q, myself, Creature down there, Odaman in the audience. And they got Seal, Kimple, and Etsuko up there in like the box. It's just something I wanted to do. I wanted an excuse to also put as many cameos in as well. But then we get to day 25. Day 25 is also one of the ones I'm most proud of because, again, background practice and also the opposite of Arctic. So Flaming Inferno, so like volcanoes, lava, magma like they were standing on and stuff like that. Humidity was his enemy, but the heat was neat. Common misunderstanding about him: ice cream, cold tea, nor hugs included. Don't touch him. Don't touch me. So it's also, I made this basically the opposite of Arctic as well, but because Etsuko makes the jokes all the time of how the heat would actually not be all that hot, I made an excuse to put them in there so that they could say how chilly it kind of still is. So that's why they're in the background. But this one was fun for a couple of reasons. I hadn't drawn a full picture of my character also since the Captain's and Vice's image, so it gave me an excuse to do that. Draw and practice coloring like this fire sword, some little fireballs, the hoodie again with all the dots. I had an idea. I won't fully spoil it, but there's a reason I put this same one over here on top of Etsuko as well. There's a reason, and I'm going to explain it more when we get there. I have an idea, and I'm going to knock it around in this video, but this also, I just really liked how this came out too. Not just because it's the opposite, but also, anytime I do a background, and I even kind of like it, I'm going to be proud of it, basically, is how it works going forwards. And so this is an example of that, where I'm just proud. I'm proud of how it came out. I like how it came out. I think it came out exactly how I would have hoped it did. I got to practice blending the colors together, and how lava kind of starts forming and stuff at the bottom there, and how like stuff solids will be up in there and stuff like that. It was fun. It was a good time. Day 26 was puzzling. So I had a dream once. On the moon was like a field of like sakura trees, cherry blossoms, right? There was a bit more too. There's some like torii gates. There were some like stone pathways. It was like a whole garden area on this one section, and it made no sense why it was there, but it was there, and it looked really cool actually. Maybe because it made no sense why that would be on the moon, but it was there and it was on the moon. You could have the earth in the background of one of the bigger trees, and it was a really cool shot. I couldn't draw it perfectly here, but I tried. And I kind of like how it came out here, but it was a cool way to kind of remember something from a dream that I had that looked really neat. That as I get better at art, maybe I'll try it again one day. But it was really neat. It was like these nice big walkways and stairways with the gates, but also all these trees around too. And it was really nice scenic wise, especially because it was on the moon of all places, and you could breathe just fine. There was no suffocating. Day 27, onion. Nah, today they cry. So you just have this onion down here saying, "Don't look, sweetie." Dad, no. Because in the background, his dad's about to get knifed. Yeah, goodbye, onion. Day 28, skeletal. So speaking of Digi yet again, speaking of Digi and graphic. So graphic gave me a challenge back in August about drawing. If I want to learn and practice like proportions, try drawing the skeleton, and then try drawing the muscle groups on top of the skeleton, and then go from there. So why this isn't that full idea, I was like, cool, this is a great idea to kind of practice that idea that graphic gave me a little bit. And then also Digi, one of his previous names was Daddy DiGiorno, and he had the skeleton character, this dapper looking skeleton character. So given it was in October, what would have been his 30th, birth month and stuff, I kind of combined a couple of those ideas, gave him the hat and everything, and cleaned up nicely on this one. And this is what I mean too. It's like, for people that think like, oh man, Gam, you've really become a proper artist. I could never do what you did. I couldn't do what I did either until I started. I couldn't do this back when we started this video in, beginning of 2024 even. This takes time. It takes practice. You're going to have to find time to put an effort too sometimes because everyone's life is busy. But if you do, you can do stuff like this. You can do stuff. You right now can do this. Maybe not tonight, but you can do this. This isn't something that's some impossible thing to grab. Because I couldn't grab this originally, and here we are doing this, doing Inferno. We're doing stuff. 28 or 29 lesson in the ninja world. Those who break the rules are scum. That's true, but those who abandon their friends are worse than scum. That's a life lesson Kakashi taught me back in 2005, and I've held on to it ever since. It's part of the reason why he's my anime goat. But yeah, remember I talked about drawing Kakashi? I was like, we can run that back. We can draw Kakashi. Come on now. And so we did. This one's fun. Day 30 is called Vacant. So there's a vacant. I mentioned I do parodies. So like Destructives was a parody of Omega. Noah is a parody of the Space Colony Arc. Noah stands for New Orbital Atmospheric Habitat. My bad. So there's a lot of things about it that in design are similar to the arc, but its story deviates from the arc. It's heavily inspired by the arc in concept. The story around it is a bit different. I won't get too into it, but basically it was designed as a vessel that was going to leave eventually and voyage out of Earth's orbit and venture all the way to the asteroid belt and back even. So its nose is actually more of like a giant, there's like a metal lathe machine that I worked with when I was 14 in a metal shop. For like a good 3 months. I was in metals and wood shops, as a matter of fact, back when I was 14. It's how I made a ring. I don't have that ring anymore, unfortunately. But anyways, that came to me from there, from all that time ago, because that's back like a year after that story had started. Remember, I started that story at 13. Anyways, with this, so it was more of a giant, kind of like a giant mining vessel colony hybrid, where it was big enough to house people if they wanted to go on this voyage that was going to take, maybe like at least a year, maybe, a half decade, who knows. It was massive enough. You would have plenty of room with you and your family to live on this place for a while. But also that was part of it. So as they go out, they can mine stuff. If they find something, they could acquire samples and stuff and make a round trip eventually back to Earth. It never got the chance to go on that launch, though. A tragedy of a different kind struck it. And so it's kind of just been desolated and abandoned in orbit for a long time. There's a lot more actually story when it comes to this. This is also a fun lever, as I call it, because in the story, the way the story works is your character can just kind of slot itself into this universe as is. And what I mean by that is there aren't too many rules that have to be abided by that would mean that your character would have to change to be able to be in this universe, right? To the point like, now let's see, this could be in universe and it's completely fine as is. There's nothing that has to change about my character, and there'd be nothing that have to change about, Etsuko's character. This could also be in universe as is, right? It could just be, there's not too many levers that need to be pulled in that case, but one lever that does need to be pulled is maybe explaining how certain things are possible. So by having Noah exist, even though it's a parody of the Ark, by keeping it around and eventually fleshing it out as its own thing, it can be a lever of how maybe something that was a bit more of a created character or a genetic character or something could exist in this universe. Maybe something about them or one of their ancestors or someone they know relates back to this, space colony or this project that made this space colony a reality. The same way that I have this great tree that has a proper name that I forget right now, that basically its whole existence is to explain how people could be hybrids of like a human and an animal kind of a thing. Steam also has this going in binary reigns. He's explained that's part of how the stages and stuff exist. It's to also explain how like furry characters could exist in this universe. It's kind of like that concept where Noah is one lever, this tree is another lever, but they're all levers to kind of also explain how different kinds of characters could exist if they want to go the route of explaining. Other characters could just exist because they just exist. So going back here with these two, they could also just exist in this world because they just do. And that's also a good enough explanation because a lot of it can come down to what you would be looking for. If you're looking for trying to find explanations for your character, fine. If you're not and your character just kind of is and they kind of just have been, also fine. But I kind of like keeping stuff like this around, even if it started as a parody, because it's a cool thing to then flesh out and go, okay, well then what can we do with that though? Oh, we can do yada yada yada. We can do this, this, and this, and we can fill this out and maybe figure things out. And so, on the more genetic or engineered or created side, we have Noah. On the more natural side, we have that tree where maybe like your ancestors are either from here or came here or met someone from here that moved elsewhere and met what ended up being like your great 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 grandparents, and that's why the genetic now exists in your bloodline. Whatever the case is, having those levers in a story to tell a story and flesh out a universe can be useful though. It can make people kind of like relate a bit more to what's going on, because the bulk of the universe that this story was around was just things were how they were because sometimes that's how life is. In a story, it feels like you always have to explain everything, but in reality, if something crazy happens, it might just be because it is. You know what I mean? So I might still flesh out some more things as we go on, but for now, some things are because they are, and other things are because I'm figuring stuff out. Which then leads to day 31, which is award. So it was just like, so another successful completed Inktober. So I just kind of did everyone's character having a little bit of a cameo. And also another happy 31 days of Inktober completed under our belt for 2025. Now my voice is trying to act like it's not going to stick around. So we're going to continue on. But Inktober was fun and I learned some things. And I'm so glad that even though Blau waited as long as he did, and I feel bad, buddy, even though we didn't, when they commissioned me, we never settled on like a date or stuff like that. So it's fine, but at the same time, I do feel bad making them wait. But I learned some things doing Inktober that made me a bit more happier that they waited, because some of these look as good as they do because of me trying to make an active effort to learn over this year. Some characters I never drawn Lucy's character before now. I'm definitely going to be drawing them again because I can do that better. You know what I mean? Like I said, so this is going to be fun going forwards too. But I'm a little bit upset that they had to wait, but I'm also not because of how good I feel like, or basically I feel like their commission, as we're about to get into it, came out as good as it did because of the wait. So here's Blau's commission. Here's like the watermarked version. They get the non-watermarked version. This was a hard commission to do, if I'm being honest, because their character has a lot of cool things going on about it that I've also never really noticed and or done before. So figuring out how to do it was a bit of a challenge for me. One that was fun was the eyes, though. This is the first time in a while I've drawn eyes that I actually really liked. I really liked how these eyes came out. The bleeding of the colors with the hair is kind of like almost like a granite layer, but having the shading going for that. The wings I messed up on. I knew they had wings, but I couldn't remember what their wings looked like. And then I remembered afterwards when I'd finished. So I probably will actually go back and fix those. But the dress, this took a while. I'm not going to lie. Just this section right here has like a good 400 dots. So there's a lot of dots I drew for this. All right. But it looks cool. So I'm glad I did it, right? When you bleed the different blues over here, and then put the dots on the top, when you have the stars and you give them a little bit of a glow, when you got inside here where the dots actually go from white to gray to blue, and then skin. This is the first time I whatever I did for the skin here, I kind of like how it turned out. I usually don't like coloring skin. I usually don't like how it looks when I do that, and I do like how it looks here. And then background, I kind of like the background on this one too, where I did the kind of a cosmic starry background. We had the moon in there in the middle, sure, because it helps me take up a lot of space that I then don't have to do as many stars for. Clouds at night are different than clouds during the day. Clouds during the day, at least the way I do it, is usually a dark color in the back, and then you do like lighter colors on the top, kind of like fluffy and stuff. So like it'd be like maybe like a gray color and then do white on top. Well, at night it's reverse, where you do the light color on the bottom and you do the dark color on top. So just learning something like that is something I didn't know about until I did this, and they like how this came out too. So I'm really happy with that as well. Like the lesson I mentioned earlier, when you do something like that for somebody and they like it, even if you feel like you could do some things better, like I could, that's really what matters the most. And so if they waited as long as they waited and they liked how this came out, I'm glad. So they also, because they waited as long as they did, they got that version there. So there's a version with the wings and the tail. There's a version without the wings and the tail. Then there's the G Republic version with both wings and tail and not wings and tail. And then there's the G Republic card. So kind of inspired by Steam with its mechanics cards, I started making G Republic cards, where when I draw the G Republic version of someone's character, I'm also doing this card with it. Now the G Republic version of someone's character is a work in progress. It's partly an excuse to practice different colors on the same thing within the universe, right? So the G Republic was my organization. As I'm fleshing it out into a more of an original situation, one of the things is how people would operate with it, which is why I mentioned why I put the jacket on Etsuko before, is because I don't want to make it just a recolor where I take someone's character and just make it, blacks and reds with maybe some whites. I maybe want to add two things. One, a bit of individuality per thing, because even though it's a collective unit, I think it would be cool to still think about when I'm looking at a subject, not just autopiloting and going, oh, but this thing, might be important to someone's character. Let's see if I can still incorporate that. So that's why I kind of still kept like the blue inside of here for some of the stars and stuff like that too. Blau is German for blue, by the way. So that would be a cool thing to do. And then maybe what I might do is the captain's jacket idea. I might give everybody, it wouldn't be my hoodie, of course, like hold on now, but it would maybe be like a hoodie that's on the same thematics, like the urban camo, authentic look. They might still get that, because obviously the way this would work is all of these people would be leaders within the organization, because nepotism, that's how that works. Again, I'm making people as cool as I want to make them. So that might be a cool thing I do going forwards. It's hard to see from here, but that's what I do like on here. So like these lines are based off of the lines of my hat that goes on everybody. I've done this a couple times before, and then the pattern that's usually on the jacket, I have it on the top part up here, and that's usually would be a thing too. So if I was doing that for someone else's character, it's either they would get that within their outfit, or they would get the jacket for that reason. Or some kind of, it might not be the jacket, it just might be more additions to their outfit that then would be customizable like that. So this wasn't a commission, but when Zabel got affiliate. So to give you a timeline, Dang, I think this would have been back when Zabel still had his old job. If he wants to ever talk about that, that's his business. But that's how long ago this would have been. This would have been a minute ago. He got affiliate, and when you hit affiliate, you get like 5 to 7 free emote slots. And for some people, that's the whole reason why they might subscribe to somebody. That may be like the thing that tips the scales, right? Even is, man, this person has really cool emotes. So at the time, what I did was I made temp emotes. I'm like, okay, I can make you some temporary emotes, and then when we get you in contact with like a real artist, and you get commissioned, and you can commission them, they can get you some actual really cool emotes. It's been 3 years, and I looked up and I was like, they still have the temp emotes, which is cool and all, but as someone who's now through Inktober, 2 Inktobers and stuff, been practicing, I could just make cooler emotes myself, and they can still be temp emotes. And then when we find like a real artist, he can get some actual really cool emotes actually. But until then, I can upgrade those. I can update those for sure. Because the old emotes was just I drew his character. So what I did is I cut off the head, and I put different symbols on the top of the faceplate. Because the way I understand the explanation is his character is kind of like, say, Zero from Borderlands 2, where he has like the face, but it can kind of project different symbols and images and faces on top of it. So that's what I did for the previous one. But it's basically the same image 7 times with like a different symbol on the front. So like a question mark, exclamation point, an angry face, not too complex. And so it was like, this was supposed to be temporary, and then he could take those to an actual artist and be like, this is like the direction we want to go, and here's a visual in case we want visuals. Some people can't envision stuff because they have, was it Aphantasia? Sorry if I'm getting that wrong, but basically some people, they can't envision stuff. Like no matter how hard they try, they won't be able to do it. It's a real thing. And so sometimes people need the visual. So I'm like, okay, well, in case you end up with an artist that you like, that you can pay and they can do it, but they need the visual, let's maybe have a template. Kind of like what I did with the nanny drawing. That's why I did that. It's like, if they ever want to develop their own character, let's see if we can get something on paper that you can take to somebody and work off of that. So with these, I redid them. I was like, I can do these better though. Same concept. You can still take them to someone better one day, but for now, we can definitely upgrade these. So I think these should be given to you, Zabel, by the time this video is out. If not, then spoiler alert, I've redone your emotes, and I'll be sending them to you immediately. But there's this one. It's like an alert, like an exclamation point. It could be like he can name them whatever he wants to once they're in his hands. But that's the idea with that one. An angry face, but a lot better of an angry face. Like a happy face, like a thumbs up, right? Where thanks to Steam recently doing a Zabel commission too, and then some of the coloring stuff from back in August and whatnot, I can apply that here. I can also keep the design consistent now this time too, with the cloak and stuff. A heart emote. So the idea is the heart's also like the exclamation point being projected off of the faceplate, but as long as you can tell that it's supposed to be a heart emote, that's really all that matters. A crying emote, where like the tears, it's like they're filling up the helmet, if you will. That was a funny idea. A smug one, because everybody likes smug. I don't know why. I don't know why, but everyone likes smug, and so that's the clientele we're working with. So you get a smug emote. That's how that works. And I think there's one more. Yeah, so there's like a question mark. So there's like a what. It could be like a what or a huh, or it could be a K. Like it could be whatever. But those are the 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yep. I'm like, we can do better emotes for now, and these can still be temp emotes. He doesn't even have to use them if he doesn't want to, but if he does, cool. And then one day when he can commission, because there's artists that even specialize in doing emotes specifically, right? There's a lot of artists that I can name right now that we know of that could probably do emotes and probably have done emotes, even if it's just for themselves. But there are also artists that specialize in doing emotes. So one day maybe he could get that popping when he gets his model and stuff like that. Who knows? But in case we look up another 3 years and that hasn't happened, at least these ones, they look better and are different than just here's the head with different symbols on them. They're actual, differences here this time that he can work with, at least for now. So as we wrap up this, as we're going to bring it back to Etsuko's stream, it looks like the stream hasn't crashed this time. That's good. There was a minute when I started this that I kept crashing, and it was not my fault, I promise. But yeah, I hearken on something she said once. For all the trolling and all the whole victimizing and all that foolishness, she does speak wisdom sometimes. And that was one of those in regards to art. There's a reason Steam calls her his art professor, after all. She does, when we ever talk about art stuff specifically, bring up some really good points. And that was one of them too, was with Inktober, for example, good habits. And so I want to come to that because I want y'all next year, you don't have to do all of Inktober, but if you're someone that's always been kind of curious, at least, it doesn't have to be every single one of you, because all of you aren't necessarily interested in doing art. But if you have been interested in doing art, but you've been afraid for whatever reason, what I want you to do is, like she's mentioned, focus on establishing good habits and stuff instead of focusing on it as like a competition necessarily. Some people take Inktober as a competition, and that's their business, but that's not what it has to be for everybody. So, and it doesn't have to be every single all 31 days. I do that because I want to get better at art, and I also just like drawing. So I will do all 31 days. But like when we get to September of next year and the list comes out, maybe look at the list and you have like maybe like day 14 is something that really resonates with you. And you go, okay, cool. I want to do something like that. Or I want to do something for that day specifically. And maybe you just draw for an hour, and whatever you get done in an hour is done. For me, I know even if I, for some reason, wasn't doing every day of Inktober, I'm always doing something on the 10th, because that's when what would be Digi's birthday, for example. So that's what I mean. Like I would and not necessarily challenge you, but implore you to maybe once we get around there, if you've been on the fence, try maybe like 1 or 2 days of Inktober instead of trying to do every single day of Inktober, and see if that maybe does something for you instead. Maybe you can go, oh, I kind of like this specific day. Let me just try, even if it's just a stick figure. Go for it. Because I'm telling you right now, this video doesn't exist if I never got started back in January 2024. We got a long ways to go, but we've made progress because we started. That's the biggest thing. And I bring them up too because this conversation has happened in their chat about, say, like Twitch streams and stuff too. Some people get too caught up on the planning that they never actually just get started streaming. Sometimes someone will show up in her chat of all places and be like, how do you stream? And she'll be like, essentially, to put it bluntly, hit the go live button. Eventually you get to that point where you got to get started. So I employ any of y'all, even if it's not about art, if it's something that you're kind of interested in, but you've been holding yourself back, find a way to get started, even if it's just little by little, and progress yourself from there. And who knows where you'll end up by the end of it. But I would encourage any of y'all that have made this far in this video to go chase something. Go chase something that you've been wanting to chase, and just finding excuses to take yourself out of the game for. Why are you making excuses? Why do those excuses matter? Now, if it's something like, oh, I wanted to draw, but I've literally lost my arms, you jerk. I understand. Okay, listen. If we want to, do stuff like that, I get there's certain situations, but otherwise, if it's a mental block, if not on your own, find people to support you, right? I bring them up again. Why this is the end screen for this one, most likely. It's because for all of the victiming, bantering, all that back and talk stuff, when it came to doing the art side of this, she was definitely a proponent of everybody that was doing art. Me, Jero, Steam, all of it. So none of all of that banter stuff mattered suddenly in that moment, right? And so get a support system, right? For a lot of things that I've tried to do on the channel, for example, I have you all regulars that are watching, for example, right? That can be the difference maker sometimes, where it's like, man, I really kind of want to do this thing, but it's not even that you're afraid, but maybe you just don't have confidence in it because because of past experience even. And so finding the right people to have in your corner suddenly when you come time to need it for certain things can be the difference, right? I'm not gonna get into my personal life, but I'm definitely glad I have my siblings and my mother around still, right? So like there are certain things where when you have the right people, things can work at least eventually, but you do have to get started on some of those things eventually too. All right, so that's where we're gonna end this one. Because this one's long, so I could be here another 10 minutes rambling. I'm not going to be. I will spoil that the next project I'm probably going to be working on. Oh no, I forgot something. All right, never mind. There's gonna be another 10 minutes anyways, because like this was an example. So I drew Double Goose, for example. There's like a meme. It's like a Pepe Frog wind up about to punch somebody. This was when I did we did the Double Goose video when they kicked my butt in Battle Disc. And that's gonna be like, again, finding not just the support system, but maybe just the inspirations too to do smaller projects. This isn't the most detailed Double Goose picture you've ever seen in your life, but it works for what it needs to work for. I mentioned emotes, right? I needed like a drink slash like emote of some sort, so I drew, because the whole hot tea thing. Speaking of though, Etsugo, I was like, boom, I got an emote now I can draw. So I drew this, and now we have a drink emote. These can come from conversations or really anywhere. Find any reason to do something. Same with this one. We didn't have a hug emote. I'm like, all right, y'all be liking hugs all this time, huh? So Mioi got a hug in during that one meetup, as a matter of fact, at the VR chat mechanics thing. So I was like, cool. Now we got a hug emote since Mioi likes hugs so much. Boom. Yeah, both in one even. Perfect. It's finding even. It sounds a little petty when I say it like that though, but at the same time, find reasons. Find reasons to draw. Find reasons to draw people, places, things you want to draw. Find excuses. And then step two, obviously you got to find time. You know, if you have a very hectic, busy schedule, I understand. But when I did I did a Pumpkin Hill wrap for the first or second day of October this year. It's been a minute, so I was like, let me put together an instrumental using Beaterator, and then let me put together some lyrics, and let's do that. And so I put 5 of us in the thumbnail. There was Capstan, put Capstan in Knuckles' colors. There was Etsuko, put Etsuko in kind of Knuckles' colors, specifically his jacket. Relative to her jacket, she has the like I said, that blue jacket, that pilot outfit. I don't know what it is, but it's whatever that specific version of her is, right? So it's like, okay, cool. Well, Knuckles also has the jacket, and we'll give her the cowboy hat that Knuckles has, but instead of the stars, we'll make those battle disc, and then we'll use the cutout on the outfit here, but it's like the crest on his chest, right? So you can find maybe reasons like that where you take someone you know and combine it with something else that you know, and maybe go that way. I think I have a hatless version too, right? Yeah, there's a hatless version, there's a hat version. So there was that one, this one, me with Knuckles' colors, Jero with the small little ice on the top of his head too. So the tentacles are Knuckles colored, and the outfit again, like the both the cowboy outfit and also Knuckles, and then Knuckles himself. So I used that in the rap video, right, where I made that in After Effects, as a matter of fact. 'Cause I just put the 5 of us in the center around the circle and then the sound waves, and I drew the Pumpkin Hill background that's in there too with the lyrics. So there's that one. Find reasons to do that. Find reasons to do that. Just find any reason to just be creative, and sometimes things will come to you, and it'll be very, very fun. All right. Side note: if you get this far in the video. Just this is for y'all who've made this far in the video. Did you know that if you on your own, either on your own stream or on a stream you moderate for, you can go and click on somebody's name if they're in your chat, and it won't work here because I'm not a moderator here. But if you click on someone's name, right? Usually when you click on someone's name, also when your moderator stuff will drop down like how many messages they've sent and all this stuff under here too. I would recommend doing this in mod view, but if you're ever bored, by the way, since I'm bringing this up and why we're ending here, why I actually was coming here too was I talk about chat messages. I'll screenshot them to use them as inspiration and stuff sometimes. When you do that in mod view on a chat you mod for, or your own stream, if you're ever bored, you can click on someone's name and then scroll back and see their messages from before, in case there was like, oh, I remember having a conversation with so-and-so like a time ago. Or if you're really bored, and this one I would recommend mod view specifically because your stuff will start lagging, you can go back and see what their first message ever was. Because you're like, when was the first time this person ever spoke in this chat or my chat? Now they have to be in the chat for this to work. So if you're offline and no one's around, you're not going to be able to do it. But if you mod for somebody and they're offline and you go hang out in their chat, you'll be able to do it to yourself as well. And I bring that up because I've mentioned in most people's chats, I guarantee you my first message ever is Mechia, like hashtag Mechia Steam Raid. And that might be something I draw in the future one day. I don't know exactly how that would work, but that could be fun. And that's what I mean by inspiration. So as we gear up to get out of here, actually and finally, it's just like I said, find the right support, find the right people. There's a lot of things you can do in this world. Anyways, thank you so much for watching this video. You don't have to like, comment, subscribe, or hit that bell notification or any of that good stuff. I just kind of wanted to do this idea. This one was going to be longer than any previous sequential video, so if I do one every, say, half a year, it's not going to be nearly this long. I wanted to go over like everything that got us on this journey until now. Next video will obviously just be, you know, the things we've done since this one and so on and so on. So they'll be significantly shorter. But hey, we're trying to farm watch time anyway, since we're going to get on partnered at this rate. That wasn't supposed to sound as piteous as it probably just came across. But yeah, might as well make some long videos while we still have the chance, and let's see how that works too. But also just on a more serious note, have fun. Make sure to have fun. Have fun with whether it's art, whether it's streaming, whether it's whatever it is, whatever you get started with. Have fun, because life's too short. there are times and places to be serious. There are times and places to take things seriously. There are times and places where you need to be like the adult version of yourself, in terms of like the most mature version of yourself, or the most serious version of yourself, or whatever. But there are other times where you're allowed to kind of unwind a bit and kind of be not that. Find those moments. Find them in a hobby, find them in being goofy in VR chat on a freaking horse racing course or whatever. Or blackout sugar rushes and art and games and hangouts and calls and people and friends and family. Do that for me. If you made it this far in this video, that's my one actual request. All right, live. Don't just live to survive, live to live. All right. And in this case, if it's art, make sure to pick up the pen. You don't like one of the versions of something I drew? Draw one of the things I drew, but in your envisionment of it. Then there we go. They be your inspiration. I don't see that as plagiarizing. Go for it. Take your interpretation of something, and have fun. Have fun. Bye bye.